Okay, welcome everyone. Talking to Otangelo right now, and the reason I'm talking to Otangelo is I just had, I don't know if you could call it a discussion with one Darth Dawkins. Lasted about 10 minutes, and it ended with me being muted and being told I'm being invasive, blah blah blah. I'm a prevaricator, all the usual. And Otangelo said, "Hey, well, do you want to talk to me?" And so I said, "Sure, Otangelo, let's do it. Do you want to do a live stream?" And he said, "Okay." So here we are. Welcome, Otangelo.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So my first question to you would be, you made the first introduction to what happened, but what are your thoughts about what just happened at the Discord channel with Darth?
Well, I mean, a lot of people listening to this perhaps weren't in the room, but my thoughts on it, and I will upload it for all my wonderful subscribers and viewers tomorrow. I'll upload it tomorrow because I already uploaded a video today. My thoughts were that Darth, first of all, above almost everything else, it seems like he wants to talk and argue about definitions. And it's really, really just a waste of time. It's a complete waste of time to argue about definitions. I don't know why people on the internet are so obsessed about arguing about definitions, right? So the only thing that I can do is say, hey, we're using this word. This is what I mean by this word. Do you mean the same thing? No, you don't mean the same thing? Okay, what do you mean by this word? Okay, well, for this conversation, I'll adopt that definition of that word and we'll continue. But Darth, that's not possible. So that's what I attempted to do. I made it very clear that this is what I mean by this. If you have a different definition, that I am this under that definition. And it was just like this nonsense about being an agnostic or an atheist. Now, I don't claim to be an atheist. I would only claim to be an atheist maybe under Darth's definition, because he thinks that either the Christian God exists or no God exists. I don't think that the Christian God exists. I think some other God concepts are coherent, and therefore I would believe that no God exists, because to Darth the only one that exists is the Christian God. So even saying that, couldn't get anywhere, right? Now,
Well,
before that, we had a discussion about his pluralism and his misrepresentation of his of God with the minimalist characteristics. But go ahead, Dr. Angelo. What were you going to say?
Well, as you probably know, I come from Evidentialist Apologetics background. That has always been my approach. I like the cumulative argument for God's existence, where we start with the first question: is there a God? Is there no God? That's the first question. And I don't think it makes much sense to go to the Christian God if an atheist doesn't believe that there is a God. And with a God, I use that minimal definition: a creator, which is intelligent, eternal, powerful, and is necessary and instantiated everything, which then is dependent upon it. That's it. I think the whole conversation in regards of definitions can just finish by making that definition.
Okay. I mean, the more qualities that you tack on, the more that it's going to be harder to get on board, right? What you presented, I don't really see anything incoherent there. So I would just be agnostic towards that concept. And next, I would just listen to what you have to say about that concept.
Yes, I mean, starting from that point, we have the evidence, which is the natural physical world. And that demands an explanation. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there a physical world? Why is there consciousness? Why are there humans which are conscious, intelligent, moral agents rather than not? Why are we here? That is the big question which we all try to elucidate. That's the issue which I think we all deal with, and to which we want to find answers. And I think you, Tom, also want to find an answer which is most likely true, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, if we could go kind of like not too many points at one time, and I will address what you said about the physical world. So you're pointing to the physical world, and I presume that you think that this is evidence for God, correct? Like the physical world exists, right? This points to God. Isn't that what you want to say?
Well, I want to say following. Before we actually even start a journey diving into trying to figure out what is the most case adequate explanation of our existence, we need to establish a consistent epistemological framework upon which we then can make our investigation. And this is something which I very frequently see atheists not doing.
Okay, and how do you suggest we proceed there, Otangelo?
I think there are three key points which have to be considered. One is science, the second is philosophy, and the third is theology.
Okay, and what do we need to hash out in order to talk about the physical world being evidence for God, Otangelo?
Okay. The two possible competing explanations are either there is an intelligent eternal creator at the bottom of reality or not. That is a true dichotomy. That is the possibilities that we have at hand. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, that's the dichotomy, yes.
Yes, it's not only a dichotomy. I am asking you if you agree or disagree, or do you think there is another option or other options in plural?
There are no other options in a dichotomy. There's only two. I agreed to that.
Okay, so that's what we try to figure out. Is there a God or not?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so since the God option is intelligent and we have a physical world, we need to try to find out, is intelligence required to set up that physical world or not? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so are there things that would come straightforward into your head, which you think require always intelligence, which are things that unguided random events would not be capable of to instantiate?
Hold on. Are we still on the three things that we need to do before are we still on the establishing epistemology thing? I don't understand what's going on.
Well, since you agree that that we don't have to stick just to science and to scientism and to evidentialism, then I am fine. If you agree with me that philosophy and theology and science are triumvirate, let's say, which work together in order to establish what is most likely true, we can move on.
Yeah, of course.
So if you disagree, then we can stop and first figure out if that is a solid epistemological framework upon which to construct our investigation.
Okay, if you're asking me if I disagree, then in the scope of this discussion, we're going to use philosophy, science, and what else was it?
Theology,
right? I don't know what theology is, but in this context.
Well, I mean, in a cumulative argument, of course, once it is established that most likely a God exists, then we have to move forward, and that goes into theology. We go into the metaphysical, and that includes theology.
Yeah, we're going to use all these tools to hash this out, right?
Yes.
So now that we got that out of the way, I'm going to go to your first point, which was about the physical world, right? The first thing that you presented, presumably, and stop me if I'm wrong, you're presenting the physical world as evidence why God created it, right? Why God is real, and he subsequently created the world.
No, I didn't start.
You don't think the world is evidence for God?
Well, wait. First, I established that there are two possible explanations for the physical
Already
world.
done. Check. We're on the same
Okay.
page.
Yes, right. Okay. So now my next question was...
Hold on a second. I'm still talking about this world. Look, it's established, right? This dichotomy thing, I'm on board, Otangelo. For the rest of the
Okay.
conversation, I acknowledge your dichotomy. Please don't bring it
Okay.
up again. Going forward, right? You think that the physical world supports one of those two propositions, correct?
Well, I would like to go through to come to eventually to that conclusion. Maybe it is your conclusion or another one, but we can go quickly through that, and I think it will not take too long to establish some things. Okay.
Look, for the sake of this discussion, right? If you want to qualify, I don't have any problem with you qualifying, Otangelo. I'm asking you, please, for the sake of me, for the sake of the audience, there's 58 people listening. I don't want to go through it, and I don't want 62 people listening now. I don't want everyone to be sitting here while you talk for minutes on end and then give a qualifier, give a yes or no at the end. If you know yes or no, please say it in the beginning, and then you can qualify your answer for as long as you want, right? If at the beginning of your sentence you don't know the answer, say, I don't know. And then you can continue to talk, right? But I don't want to be sitting here listening for some sort of payoff that might never come. I don't want to. Nobody wants to. 67 people that are watching right now, they don't want to listen to that either.
Okay, you know that I'm a Christian, right?
Yes.
Okay. What I will present to you is good reasons why to believe that God exists.
Okay, look, I just want to address the first point that you made still, right? Is because you talked about the physical world. And you talked about looking at the physical world, and it seemed like you were saying that the physical world is evidence for God. Is that true? Yes or no?
That's not what I said at the present moment.
I'm asking you, right?
You know it. You know my position. So why are you asking? You know that I'm a Christian and that I am a theist. So have you any doubts in regards of that, or do you want?
You might not think it's evidence.
Okay, so do you want that I declare that for the viewers that we don't?
Would you rather listen? Answer me honestly, Otangelo. Right? Would you rather me put words in your mouth, Otangelo? Is that what you want me to do?
Okay.
Because this will be a very short discussion. If so, I can just put any words in your mouth. You don't think it's more courteous to let you give your own position?
I already said to you, I am a theist, I am a Christian.
Yes, I heard that. But do you think that the world is evidence for God?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you answering that. So, in response to that, right, I would say, now, you're saying that the world is evidence for God existing, and I'm going to say we have two hypotheses here, right? One is that God exists, and one is that God doesn't exist. Now, in order for the world, the birds, the flowers, the trees, as Ray Comfort would say, in order for the world to be evidence for God, right? We have to have the expectation that would all exist, right? Now, from what you gave to me,
I don't understand what you just said right now.
Yeah, I'm going to explain it to you. It to you, right? You have to have, it has to make a prediction. We have to expect it for it to be evidence, right? Because if we can expect the evidence, if we can expect a world to exist with God or without God under both hypotheses, well, then it's not evidence. And I'll give you an example. I'm going to tell you, right?
That's
yes, the world does exist. That's true, right? However, right, if we're talking about the God that you outlined, which was eternal, it's a mind, whatever. I didn't hear any. If you want to reiterate it, you can. For everyone who's joining right now, you can reiterate your definition of God. Go ahead. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Eternal, intelligent, necessary at the bottom of reality, upon which everything else depends.
Okay. So from that definition, I don't see how it entails and that we would have the expectation that he would create this world, the birds, the flowers, and the trees, and TikTok. Therefore, how can it be evidence? Because we can expect it either way, right? If God was eternal and blah, 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 doesn't seem like necessary that he'd make the earth. And if God made the earth, well, it seems possible too. So in what sense is it evidence, right? It's compatible with either way.
It's compatible either way. What do you mean with that? It's compatible.
If God is eternal and omnipotent, omniscient, blah, blah, blah,
right?
What about that says that he must have created the earth?
Did I say that? Well, did I say that?
Well, if you're saying that it's evidence for it, yes, you're at the very least implying it, right? You're saying that the probability of God being real goes up, right? This is evidence for God.
Well, did I go there? Did I make that claim at this point of our conversation?
That the world is evidence for God? Yes, you did. Yes.
Well, no. You asked me if I am what my position is, and I clarified for the audience that I am a theist, that I'm a Christian. Just that. I was going to give you reasons why I hold the position that I do.
I'm pretty sure that about 5 minutes ago, we went on this whole thing about qualification, and your answer to the question was yes to, is the physical world evidence for God? Are you saying it's not?
No, that's not what I am saying, but I didn't give you yet reasons why I hold that position.
Okay. Just to be clear, and I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I misheard you. Do you look around at the world? Do you think that the world existing is evidence for God? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and say what you wanted to say.
Okay, so let me continue where you interrupted me. In order for us to come to the conclusion that an intelligent creator is necessary or not, we need to know what are the things that we know that intelligence can do, which random unguided events are incapable of doing, or it is too unspecific to come to the specific outcome of the physical universe which we have.
Okay.
Okay. So I asked you, what are things that you know that intelligence is capable of instantiate, which unguided random events are incapable of to instantiate? Do you have any example? Is there something which is in your mind which you could say, this seems to me something which I only seem that intelligence is capable to instantiate?
I mean, some kind of, let's just go to the watchmaker thing. So watches, right, seem to come from intelligence. Does that satisfy you?
For example, yes. Do you know that watches can emerge randomly without guiding intelligence?
No, I've never seen it happen.
Good. Okay, so we have already a qualifier here, right?
I'm sorry, say again?
So we have already a qualifier here, right?
Qualifier of what?
We know that intelligence can instantiate watches, and in contrast, random unguided events most likely are incapable to instantiate watches. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Good.
But most likely, probably, does not mean impossible. And we've discussed
Good.
things like this before.
Okay, so let's clarify this. Can we know with absolute certainty that God exists or that God doesn't exist? In other words, is it possible that we can demonstrate God's existence somehow?
It depends on the concept of God, Otangelo.
I just gave you the concept: an eternal, intelligent, powerful being which is necessary.
I mean, if you're asking me if I'd be satisfied in believing, or just some kind of justification like talking to him or seeing him, blah blah blah, that's possible. But are you just talking about some sort of necessary argument that proves deductively that God exists? I don't know.
Yes, you see, very frequently atheists, they demand that we demonstrate God's existence, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you think that is possible?
Well, I mean, it depends to... I think it's possible relative to whatever their standard is. For example, if I had a personal experience, Otangelo, right? And this is how I always say it. If God took me, Jesus took me by the hand, right? And he took me on the Ghost of Christmas Past tour, right? And it was completely vivid, just as I'm talking to you right now. And he gave me novel predictions on top of that came true. Guess what? I would probably believe in God, Otangelo, right?
Okay.
But that's not some sort of deductive thing, right? It still is the case that I could be wrong, right?
Well, it's not only that. You couldn't eventually use that as a proof to demonstrate to others what you experienced, because it would be a personal individual experience which you would have had. So you could have said after that experience, I have my proof, I know that God exists, but if someone would ask you, well, demonstrate it to me, then you probably couldn't, because you would have had a unique one-time event.
Well, you missed the part where I said God gave me novel predictions, and those novel predictions could be tested.
Okay.
Yeah. If God gave me the winning lottery numbers like 7 weeks in a row, yeah, that's going to be kind of compelling for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I mean, if you ask Matt Dillahunty, then he would say to you, no, this is not sufficient evidence.
Right. So when you're asking this question, it's going to depend on who you're talking to.
Well, I think that the drawing line here, Tom, is that I think that nobody can meet that burden of proof. Do you agree with that?
Well, a lot of people have had personal experiences, right? And if I trust them, that could be compelling on its own.
It could be compelling to the person that had that experience. The problem is that, and I think this is the wrong epistemological approach, which I very commonly see that atheists do when they demand that we show them that God exists, or that they demand for empirical, demonstrable evidence or proof of God's existence. I mean, I've never seen someone being able to provide that, and I think it goes both ways.
That's why they should stop claiming that they can do that.
Well, I don't, and I mean, if someone does, and it has nobody has ever been able to provide that burden of proof, then it is moot. But it goes both ways. Usually when an atheist demands that I prove God's existence, I ask, well, can you prove that the natural physical world is all there is? And of course they can't, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that demand is moot. So what does that mean? It means that the right philosophical question is, how can we best explain our existence? Or we can
No,
use
I
abductive reasoning to the best explanation.
I can go even further than that and one up you on that's the wrong approach, right? I can go one dream layer even deeper, right? And we can talk about all this stuff that you want to talk about, right? This cumulative case of this and all these different evidential things. But the real red pill, Otangelo, is this. Why on earth would we talk about all these arguments when you probably weren't convinced initially by any of them? In other words, why aren't we talking about, hey, Tom, guess what? I used to be an atheist. I used to not believe in God. And then something happened. Boom. I heard this. I heard this argument. Maybe something I don't know what happened, right? We don't know. Why wouldn't we talk about that? The thing that actually convinced you. Why would we talk about all this other evidential stuff when it's just support for an existing belief, and it's not even these arguments that changed your mind? Why would we talk about that?
Would you like that I give you a personal testimony why I became a Christian?
Yes, I want the exact reason why you became a Christian.
Okay, I was in depression and I looked for a way out of it. And then I started to seek for an answer. And I didn't know what it actually was that I was going through, but I knew that I wasn't well. And then I remembered that when I was going to sleep, when I was a child, my mother came into my room, and she is a Catholic, and she prayed an Ave Maria with me. And then when she closed the door, then I asked for 10 things that I wanted that God would do for me. And I saw that worked for me. And I stopped doing that. I stopped doing these prayers. And then when I was in depression, I thought, well, maybe I should start to pray and see if God actually can help me to go out of that depression. And it wasn't something which happened from one day to the other, but slowly I went out of depression. And in that period of time, I started to read the Bible. I had many questions which I was not understanding. And then I met a colleague at work which said, well, I am going to an evangelical church. If you want, you can come and ask your questions. We have brothers and so forth. They can answer those questions. So I went there, and they addressed the teachings of Catholicism, which I was raised with, addressed this and explained me that our salvation is only through Christ and what he did on the cross for us, for humanity. And if I would surrender to what he did for me, then I could become a child of God. So I thought about that, and I said, well, I actually think that I am already on this track, and I want that because I saw that God has intervened. I'm out of depression, and I want to know that God more. So I went there again, and there I gave my life to Christ. That was the 29th of December, 1984. So it's about 37 years. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that is my conversion story, Tom.
It doesn't actually sound like a conversion story. It sounds like you were just born into Catholicism.
Well, I grew up as Catholic, but then I converted myself. I left the Catholic faith and I became an evangelical Christian, which I am until today.
Right. So by conversion story, I don't think you meant Catholicism to evangelical Christianity.
I converted from a non-practical practicant Catholic to a practicant evangelical Christian, basically.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's great that you're no longer depressed, but I mean, you got to understand that atheists are going to hear the story and they're just going to think, oh, well, things that you weren't happy about, you found out that like this life is only temporary. You found an already built social network. You've made more friends, and the things that were somehow like causing you to be depressed. We're only of this world and stuff like that. It just seems to have just a really simple explanation to the atheist, right? Now, can you see why this conversion story just like really isn't compelling to anyone?
Yeah, of course, Tom, and that's precisely why I only told you my conversion story because you wanted to know it, right?
That's true. Let me ask you this. Do you know of other Christians that had an actual argument that made them convert? Because
I think
like I don't know of a single one.
right. Well, so let me ask you, since we established that there is a true dichotomy, either there is a God or not, right? And you are an agnostic, you are undecided in regards of the God claim, if God exists or not. You are undecided. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to try to establish here a way to investigate which proposition that is most likely true. And since we have clarified that demanding for absolute proofs or demonstrations of God's existence is meaningless because both sides do not have an answer to the ultimate question. Neither do atheists, which claim that the natural physical world is all there is. They cannot provide absolute proofs that there isn't anything beyond that. And theists, on the other side, they cannot demonstrate God. So asking for absolute proofs is meaningless, right?
So do you think Darth is lying or just wrong?
Well, he provides his reasoning, and theists, they can adopt and acknowledge it or not.
Right.
I think it is an interesting approach, and I am trying to dive into it and to understand it, and I think it's fascinating.
He provides his reasoning, but that's going to be irrelevant because you don't think that it's possible to show it. So any reasoning that he shows, right, by your lights is going to fail. So you must think that Darth is either wrong or he's lying.
I think it isn't neither one nor the other, Tom. I think that the basis of the pre-sup approach is Anselm's I forgot it now.
Do you think the
It is the
pre-sup
five.
approach is...
It is Anselm's 5 ways of the fact that God is necessary. That there is a distinction between a necessary creator and creation which is dependent on that necessary being. And if you read the 5 ways, I think this is the core argument of the pre-sup approach. I think it is consistent and I agree with it. I think that by mere logic, okay, not empirical ontological proofs, we can come to the conclusion that God must exist. But it isn't a proof in the sense that I can demonstrate you God. I cannot give you an empirical demonstration of God's existence. It is just something which you can conclude based on reason.
Okay. Otangelo, would you mind? I mean, we've been talking for over half an hour. Do you mind if I open the discussion up to other people if they want to join?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to put the link in the YouTube chat, and somebody wants to come in and I see them and I recognize them or whatever, I will let them in. See, did it? Oh, there it is. I don't really know what else to say at the moment, Otangelo. Oh, Jack Burton is here.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Jack can come in. Jack, do you have anything to say?
No, just the necessity definition keeps popping up, and every time he goes with necessity, it's he's invoking what do you call it? Modal reasoning, right?
Yeah.
So the modal argument can pretty much just be negated just by the opposite modal argument, right? So we don't really make any progress there, right?
Well, present it. What is your argument?
Let's see. I think I got it. Paper clip somewhere. What is it? It's possible that God exists. If it's possible God exists, that he exists in some possible worlds. And if he exists in some possible worlds, then he exists in all possible worlds. And the inevitable conclusion is therefore God exists, right?
No,
Yeah, that's the ontological argument.
If a necessary God exists, if it's possible that a necessary God exists.
Okay, I'll give you the of answer.
Well,
okay?
If it's necessary, I mean, we're still in the modal territory, and we're just talking about possible worlds. But
yeah, it's not about the ontological argument. Let me give it to you. Okay, the physical universe exists. Existence cannot come from non-existence. Since we exist, then being has always been in one form or another. The universe had a beginning. It cannot be the product of an infinite series of regress, nor be caused by nothing. Therefore, a non-physical being must have existed beyond the universe, causing the universe into existence. That being is God. That's basically the argument.
Okay, where did you, how does it follow from first, I agree, there's something instead of nothing. Nothing cannot produce something. But where do we get a universe with a starting point? Because for all we know, everything's energy and it just exists in one form or another. And the universe is just a big ball of energy that existed in one form or another. So how do you go from that to there was definitely a starting point?
Okay, if there was a starting point, there was a cause, because nothing has no causal powers, right?
Okay, well, how do you get to a starting point? That just seems like a claim.
Well, there are three reasons: scientific reasons and philosophical reasons. First, we have scientific reasons. The second law of thermodynamics, which states that the universe started in initial state of low entropy and moves to high entropy, and when it has reached the highest state of entropy, then it cannot perform any work anymore, and then it's basically dead. So that means that the universe cannot be back in the past eternal. Do you agree with that?
No, because you're ignoring the other laws of thermodynamics, and you're just ignoring the point that entropy becomes itself a form of energy. Like it's predictable and it always seeps into every closed system.
So are you claiming that the second law of thermodynamics somehow in our universe can be not in operation?
Well, no, I'm thinking you're claiming that by invoking God.
No. I am just asking you. No. Listen, I am asking you. Do you know a state of affairs where the second law is not in operation? Yes or no?
Wait, say that again. Sorry, I got distracted.
Has the second law of thermodynamics be demonstrated to be not in operation somehow?
As far as I know, no. It's held true.
Good. So that means that we will lead to a state of heat death where there will be no work or change performed anymore, and the universe will be dead. That means that the universe cannot be eternal back in the past. It must have had a beginning.
Well, that's not true, because then the weaker force is the one that takes over and just coalesces back to like the oscillating theory, where all these supermassive black holes congeal and then we get a new Big Bang.
Yeah, getting in the weeds, boys. Getting in the weeds, man.
Okay.
By the way, thank you to Harry Pothead. I just got here, went to the start today's video with Jay Ramos. Great. I'm just gonna leave that there. Thank you. But if you guys, I mean, look, you got to understand, there's people listening to this, right? And start talking about like thermodynamics. It's like let's keep it accessible, right? Like we don't have to go to these lengths to talk about these issues, right?
I
mean,
don't
if you
think you're
really
giving your
want to-
audience enough credit, man. Come on, they can follow this stuff.
Look, a lot of them can possibly, but they also might have their eyes glaze over while they're able to follow it. Deepak,
All
I'm
right,
gonna
yeah,
let you.
yeah,
What's up?
fair point.
Deepak Rama. Welcome.
Yeah, it's a long name.
Deepak, let me butcher this.
I'm sorry?
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Deepak, you are you? What is? Look, who are you? Tell us about you.
What am I? I'm just a guy. I listen to these a lot. I'm actually
Breaking up.
I feel like everyone's listening to each other for a change.
You might want to turn off your camera
Oh,
because you're
is
breaking
this
up.
better?
You probably don't have enough bandwidth.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's weird. Is that better?
I don't know. Hello.
Hello?
Yeah.
Jeez. Hello?
Yes.
is that better?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Deepak is gone. Yeah. I am going to keep the train moving. Right. Bad audio, bad connection. You're just done. Right. Have an audience to entertain. I'm not going to sit here and do tech, the help desk with people who want to come on. Now, Otangelo, let me ask you this, right? 'Cause I was asking someone this the other day. I was asking Jonathan. The question that I asked him was, well, first, do you think that Jesus was the Son of God?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what I want to know is, what the heck does that mean? Because I know it's not literally the Son of God, right? The Father, right? So it can't be literal. That means it has to be figurative. But if it is figurative, so it has to be pointing to something. What does it mean figuratively?
Well, when Jesus was here on earth, he related to the Father as being above him, right?
I don't know, because from what I've heard, the Trinity is comprised of three co-equal parts, as Darth would say. Do you disagree? I don't see how someone that is equal to another person is above or below them.
Yeah, I think that was the state of affairs when Christ was here on earth in human form. Then he freely submitted, he did submit himself in a relationship where it was the Son figure and the Father in heaven was above him.
No, that can't be the case, because he sent his Son, right? According to John 3:16, he sent his Son, right? That means he was a son, and then he sent him. So he can't be the Son in virtue of him being the Son because he was on earth. He was the Son, right? So what does that mean for Jesus to be the Son? Does it mean that he came from the Father?
No, I believe that God, the Son and the Holy Spirit, they are equally eternal. They were not created by the Father. They are all three persons. They are eternal.
So there goes that, right? So now, in what sense was he a son?
Well, I will ask him that when I'll be in heaven, because I don't know exactly about God's nature. I think I am too limited. I don't have sufficient information. So I don't think that I am capable right now to give you a qualified answer to that question, Tom.
Okay, well, I respect that. I do respect that answer. But I would just add that when you have things like, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. What does begotten mean? Doesn't mean it came from him. What does begotten mean? He gave his only begotten son. What does son mean? We don't know, right?
Okay, Tom Rabbit,
For-
let me tell you.
And
I
hold on a sec, hold on a sec.
understand.
Let me
I
just finish. Let me
understand.
just finish
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Let me just finish what
Okay.
I'm saying. This John 3:16 is drilled into your head, and every Sunday schooler knows it, right? But we don't even know what it means. Hey, you know what? I don't even know if it should be applaudable. I don't even know if this is something that really is virtuous. I don't even know if I should admire God for sending his son. Because guess what? I don't even know what son means.
Okay. So, because of that, there is no Christian God, because you don't understand the concepts?
I didn't say that.
I'm asking you.
No, that doesn't follow.
Oh, good. Okay. So we are clear on that. So that doesn't mean that because of that, the Christian God doesn't exist, right?
Of course.
Good. Okay. Okay.
Just because
So,
I don't understand something does not mean that the Christian God does not exist. True. Next.
good. Okay. So we are clear on that. So you see, Tom, I see that in 90% of my conversations with atheists, that they try to poke holes in the Bible, in the New Testament, in Jesus Christ, in the concept of the Trinity, and so forth. I see that all the time. And I see constantly atheists, when I ask them, why are you an atheist? And they will start, well, I was a believer, I was in a Christian, I grew up eventually in a Christian family and so forth. But then I started to investigate further and to become skeptic in regards of the claims of the Bible. And hey, guess what? After some time, I just couldn't believe it anymore. So now I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm an agnostic or an unbeliever. So my question to you is that maybe as well your track record? Is that as well the reason why today you are an agnostic? Or if not, what is it?
Well, the Jesus stuff to me is not distinguishable from any of the other religions, right? I look, you know how many religions are out there, Otangelo? Like a lot of people in the United States, we only kind of think that there's Christianity, really. I mean, like some of them don't even really know about other religions, right? I don't see Christianity standing out, right? I see a plethora of different religions, and to me, it all sounds like Harry Potter.
Okay. So
okay, there's nothing that makes one stand out over another, right?
okay.
They all have their own version of Ra that is on his chariot, bringing out the sun every day, and it goes past their horizon, right? They all have their versions. They all have their apologetics, which is something that Christians seem to forget so much, right? They think, oh, well, we can just talk about it. We know Islam is false because of this. Guess what? Just like you have your apologetics for all these things about all these contradictions in the Bible, the people that are Muslim are also going to have all their apologetics. Apologetics aren't exclusive to Christianity. So to answer your question, I don't see a reason why of all these religions I should pick Christianity. You tell me.
Well, I don't like to start with justifying Christianity, Tom. That's why I like to adopt in a dialogue with atheists the cumulative argument for God's existence. And that starts with the basic question: is there a God or not?
Hold on a sec. There's some super chats. I'm not. Hold on, Angelo. I'm not missing a super chat. NT writings or apologetics test against opposing Jesus groups with differing ideologies of who Jesus was and what he did. Can you ask Otangelo how he knows the image on the shroud of Turin is Jesus when he doesn't know what Jesus looks like?
Well, I prefer to give a link. If you want, you can put it in the side chat, and then he can look up all the evidence. Is that okay? I don't think we want.
I think you can put it directly into the YouTube chat right now. Right in the
if you give me a wrench, then I can do that. I don't think we want to diverge now to that topic, right?
That's fine. You can give it to me in
Okay.
private chat, and I will put it in the
Okay, good. Excellent. Just a minute, please. Okay.
You're gonna make this guy's day. Korag Nightwolf. Wow, lucky man.
Okay, here is the link.
Oh, by the way, while you're getting that, I will say, in this live stream, if any of the Darth minions want to come in here, right? And I'm only saying this because Darth is always saying, "Oh, where are all the atheists? Where are all they? I guess they're too scared." Parakeet, Tonlock, Ezra, Tim the Toolman, any of the minions, right? Those are the minions, right? There might be a couple more. Want to come in here and talk about Jesus? You are free to come in here. You're free to come in, right? Because we all know that they're not afraid, right? Because when the call goes out, where are all the theists? Where are all the pre-suppers? Where are all the Darth minions? We all know that they're going to come, right? Okay, let me get this link. Reason and science. Okay, I was expecting some kind of like answers in Genesis or something. Here you go.
Well, just to clarify, that is my personal virtual library where I collect information which substantiates my worldview.
Got it. 35-year-old virgin is Tama. Okay. I'm sorry, what were we talking about?
Yeah, you were talking about Jesus, questioning Jesus, and I explained to you that it is not a good starting point which I adopt justifying why I'm a Christian. I start asking atheists if there is a God or not. And that, in the definition which I gave previously, an intelligent, powerful creator which is necessary at the bottom of reality, which instantiated the physical universe upon which it is dependent.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Otangelo. Because you know the presupposition on this, right? Are you also of the opinion that the presupposition is that all men, everyone, all people know that God exists? Is that your understanding of the presupposition?
My understanding, Tom, is that the natural physical world is self-revelatory of a creator which instantiated it.
Okay, so you're just saying that the natural world is indicative of God.
Yes.
It's evidence of God.
Yes.
Right. We talked about that already. But I'm asking you because these people are saying that I said this the other day, right? I said, you guys think that as soon as you're born, you know that God exists, right? And then Matt Yester corrected me. He said, as soon as you're born, as soon as you're conceived. These people
nonsense, of course. I mean,
these people are actually saying over there that zygotes have knowledge that God exists. What do you think about that?
No, I don't agree with that. I think we need to have already the capacity to reason and to understand the natural world and reality in order to start to think about it and so forth. So yeah, I disagree with that.
Yeah, but even if I grant that the world, the birds, the flowers, blah blah blah, are evidence, that doesn't mean that you know that God exists, right? You can be exposed to evidence and not know and not believe that God exists, right? There's nothing entailed in that. I show you evidence, therefore you must now know that the evidence that's pointing to is true. That doesn't follow.
I think that we have a natural inclination, Tom, to understand the concept that when you see something like beauty and complexity and so forth, that it requires someone who made it, right?
Well, I mean, I don't agree with that. If I did, I'd be a theist.
Okay, so what do you think does it indicate then?
I don't think it's evidence for God.
Okay, so what is it evidence for then, if not for God?
Well, that's the thing. I think it's compatible with both hypotheses. I don't see anything about matter and motion and there being birds and flowers. I don't see any contradiction there. It could also be that God created the birds and the flowers, but with respect to God, right? Danny's here. Welcome, Danny. I'm trying to explain, Danny, to Otangelo that in order for the birds and the flowers to be evidence of God, right, we have to have the expectation that if God were real, he would create the birds and flowers. However, right, we can think about this, and it's also compatible with God being there and not creating, right? There's nothing about God's properties, him being eternal, him being omnipotent, that means that it's an entailment that we would have the expectation that he would create the birds, the flowers, and bananas, right?
Yeah, another way of saying it is
yes, he could have decided not to create the physical world. I agree with you, Tom.
Right. So how's it evidence? How is it evidence then?
Well, you have to contrast it. What I just tried to explain you previously in the beginning of our conversation, you have to contrast things that intelligence can do with things that non-intelligence. Let me repeat again. You have to contrast things that we know intelligence can do, which non-intelligence cannot do. Okay, so that's why I asked you, can you give me some examples? And you said a clock, right?
Wait, what's
question,
one thing that you think, Otangelo, that exists that it necessarily, not logically speaking, necessarily entails God?
It isn't necessary that something necessarily. Sorry, I'm confused now. Can you ask again, please?
Yeah. So what do you observe? What exists that you've observed or that you think exists other than God that entails God's existence? That's to say that if that thing exists, necessarily God exists.
Our physical reality, Danny.
Okay, so that means
The natural world.
That means that if you had a world in which there's no God, right, and there's a physical reality, that there's a contradiction between the two propositions God exists, and there is a physical reality. But I see no such contradiction. I
do. I think there would be no physical world without a creator as a starting point. Yeah, but that's that. Look, you're just repeating that. Then the fact that they're entailed, right? I'm saying that. Do you see a contradiction? Look, God exists. That's proposition. Let's represent it as G. Now, the proposition that physical reality exists, that's not G, right? That's P. So we have G and P representing the two sentences. It's not a contradiction. A contradiction would entail G and not G. Okay. So the idea is that if they're not contradictory, that means that one can't entail the other, logically speaking. Well, maybe in concept, but we are talking here about ontological physical reality and what it entails. And my proposition is that the physical universe couldn't exist if there would be no creator. Look, you just repeat, couldn't exist just means that necessarily what you're observing, the physical reality or whatever, and it entails God exists. But once again, there's no contradiction in saying God doesn't exist and there's a physical reality. Well, maybe I can explain why I think that God is necessary. Would you like? Okay, so that means you're going to show me a contradiction between the two propositions: God doesn't exist and there is a physical reality. Well, I am confused with what you're saying, Danny. Look, if you understand what
necessary means, right? That necessarily means that it's true in all cases. Okay, there's no case in which, if there's a true proposition, if it's necessarily true, there's no case in which it's false. Okay?
It's impossible that it could be a different way.
Right. That's another way of saying it. Okay. So you're saying that, right? That physical reality could not be a result of a non-God cause, or couldn't just appear randomly, right? That's what it means to say God is necessary for physical reality.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. Okay.
Okay. So the idea is that if God is necessary for reality, that means that if there's physical reality, necessarily God exists. But that would mean that there's a contradiction in saying physical reality exists and God does not exist. But I see no contradiction.
Well, the problem is not what you're saying, Danny. The problem is that we live in a world where there is time, where there is change, and that means that the physical world requires a beginning. And if it requires a beginning, it requires a cause, and that cause must be in a realm above the physical world, and that cause is God.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand you. You're saying something like this, right? That physical reality, that entails space and time. Space and time have a beginning, and that necessitates a creator. Do I understand you correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about the claim that if there's space and time, there's a beginning. Why is that true?
Well, because we have three lines of evidence: scientific evidence and philosophical evidence.
Okay, so you understand that scientific evidence is not going to get you necessity, logical necessity, because all scientific truths are truths that could have been otherwise, right? And you would accept this too, because God could create the world in any way that he wanted. He could create different scientific truths, different laws of nature, right? So no scientific truth is true necessarily. So we're not going to be able to get necessity from a set of premises that are understood scientifically. That's to say, science can't get us necessity, so science can't get us the necessity of a beginning. So
yeah, the necessity is entailed by the fact that the universe had a beginning, and therefore necessarily it had to have a cause, and that cause.
Well, no, but I'm contesting the first premise. I don't see why necessarily there's a beginning.
Well, as I told you before, because of scientific evidence and philosophical
I already went over
reasons.
that. You understand that scientific evidence can't get you necessity based on the argument that I gave. I can give it again if you want.
Well, I told you where the necessity comes from. It comes from the fact that the universe had a beginning. Therefore,
no, that's what I'm contesting. I'm contesting the fact that the universe necessarily has a beginning. I want to hear the argument for that.
No,
and it can't be scientific evidence, because scientific evidence can't get you necessity.
Well, the necessity comes from the fact that the universe had a beginning. Therefore, it must have had a cause, which is uncreated.
I'm contesting the fact that the universe had a beginning. Look, what do you think?
Danny,
you think our immediate disagreement is?
Danny, you are interrupting me. I would like that you keep it polite and that you let me finish, and then you answer. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I said that the universe had a beginning, therefore a cause which must be eternal and instantiated the universe. And from that comes the necessity, by the fact that the universe had a beginning.
Okay, Otangelo, Danny is saying, I want you to tell me why the universe had a beginning necessarily. So your answer is going to be something like, the universe had a beginning. No, sorry.
Listen,
the universe.
Tom, let me interrupt you. The necessity isn't in the claim that the universe had a beginning.
That means it doesn't have to have a beginning, though.
I put the necessity into the fact that the universe had a beginning, therefore a cause which is necessary, because otherwise the universe couldn't have a start, because nothing has no causal powers.
Okay, look, I'm gonna look. Is it not your first premise to say that the universe had a beginning? Is that not your first premise?
We can start from that, yes.
Okay, so now I want to know, yes or no, does that have to be true, or could it be false?
We start from that premise, Danny.
Oh, I'm rejecting that first premise.
Okay, fine.
It would advance the discussion if you answer if it could be true or or false?
Well, it doesn't matter. I start from that premise. If you want
No, it's
to
actually
dispute it,
it's the only thing that matters because we're talking about necessity.
okay. The necessity entails that the universe had a beginning.
Is it necessarily true that the universe had a beginning?
I just start from that premise. That's the axiom in
I'm
the argument.
rejecting that
Danny.
first premise.
Fine. So feel free to reject it. That's your
Okay,
problem, not mine.
you don't have a justification for the first premise of your argument. So why would anyone accept it? Why would anybody accept your argument if you have no justification for the premises?
I told you that I have two lines of reasoning why I think that the universe had the beginning. One is scientific, and the second is philosophic.
Okay, in the first place, there's a difference between saying the universe had a beginning and the universe had a beginning necessarily.
Okay, that's not what I am claiming.
Okay, so are you saying the universe had a beginning, or necessarily the universe had a beginning?
No, I just say that the universe had a beginning.
Okay, so that means it could not have a beginning. We could have a universe and not have a beginning. That's possible.
No, it's not possible.
Then that just means look, do you know what it means to say necessarily the universe had a beginning? That means that it's impossible that the universe doesn't have a beginning.
Well, then it simply would not be, but it is.
Okay, look, you said that you rejected the claim. You were not starting from the premise that necessarily the universe had a beginning. That means that you're okay with the possibility with the universe not having a beginning. But if you're not okay with that, then you are starting from the premise necessarily the universe had a beginning.
Well, to clarify, I don't think that the universe can be eternal. So yes, you have a point here, Danny. I would come to that conclusion that a universe, in order to exist, it necessarily entails that it had a beginning. I agree with that.
Okay, so that means so now I want the argument for why it's impossible that the universe could not have had a beginning.
Okay. So we can start with the second law of thermodynamics. We can start with the argument that we cannot arrive at the present moment in time from back eternity. What would you like to discuss?
Okay, well, we understand that if you're trying to substantiate the claim that necessarily the universe had a beginning, we can't appeal to scientific evidence, because scientific evidence can only lend us probabilities and contingency, right? All scientific truth, including your laws of nature, including the law of thermodynamics as you invoked, is contingent, meaning that in some other world, we could have different laws of nature. Okay,
so we can use philosophical arguments.
I'm almost done. In other words, you can't get a necessary fact from a contingent fact.
Okay, so we can use the philosophical aspect that we cannot get to the present moment in time from back past eternity.
Okay, so that's a good way to start. Okay, so you're suggesting this, right? That we're in a present moment now. And if there were an infinite number of events prior to the present moment, we would never be in the present moment. Is that the argument?
Yes.
Okay. So this presupposes an A theory of time. Now, what is it? Why should I accept a presentism view, which is a kind of A theory of time, rather than a B theory of time?
Okay. So you can stick to the B theory of time and believe that God is not necessary, and that the universe doesn't necessarily require a beginning. I reject the B theory of time for good reasons. Would you like that I expose them to you?
Let's hear for why should I accept A over B theory? You said you have an argument. Let's hear it.
Okay, give me a minute. I don't have that in my mind. I have to. I will quote it to you. Okay.
Fair enough.
Just a minute. Okay.
How's it going, Anti-Kithera? What's up, man?
Hey, I appreciate seeing Otangelo on here. I've gone on long rants with him back and forth on YouTube comments, but he seems a lot more civil in real life.
Is that true, Otangelo?
His ability to tolerate Darth is admirable.
like this.
But I mean, what Otangelo is trying to do now, he's trying to overthrow like the broad consensus of physics. I mean, it's just he's going to rummage around for some apologetic for a theory of time that no physicist uses, that we just have so much evidence against. And to Danny's point earlier about the laws of physics not requiring some necessary foundation. I mean, you can look at the laws that were selected, and these are not the kinds of laws you would expect God to create, right? I mean, God is supposedly some immaterial mental being, and yet he can nonetheless, we for some reason require that he have this really complicated physical world with all of these super intricate neuronal structures that create consciousness. But he doesn't need that. So he's created these psychophysical laws that just point to evolution, right? We're going to create the same exact psychophysical laws that would be required if there weren't a God. And that's what God decided to do. Like the apologetic on that just doesn't make any sense. And I think if something doesn't make sense, that is not a reason that you should believe in it, right? Otangelo is saying, oh, if just because it doesn't make sense to you, does that mean it's not true? No, but it's certainly not a reason for me to believe it.
Well, you have brought up a lot of things, and I think that it would entail some longer discussion to go into each of the things which you brought up, which I don't think it is the format right now. But I'll be more than happy to.
I'm sorry. What is the format? No.
Okay,
no,
you said you want to talk about A, B theory later, because that's convenient for me because I do have to go. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Danny. Bye-bye. Yeah, I don't look. There's no official format. Otana just wanted to talk to me after we had a discussion. So,
yeah, considering that you seem to be.
Considering that you guys also have some kind of history that goes back to the text
sure he
chat.
Doesn't, I'm sure he doesn't remember me at all. he's a very prolific commenter.
Hey, I mean, I said go for it. Take it step by step.
I think the one that I remembered us having was just about the beginning of the universe, that nothing is actually impossible. So positing that something can't come from nothing is not really a sentence that has any meaning to it, that nothing is logically impossible, which means that existence is necessary, no God required. So
what I am saying is that if there were absolutely nothing in an ontological or philosophical sense, then
if there was nothing, then
can I finish, please?
Sure.
Okay, so what I am saying is that something cannot come from nothing, period. That doesn't have to be explained. That is obvious. So that entails that something, since we exist, something must have always existed. And since it is not the universe, it is something above the universe.
You're not the universe, but the universe is all that exists. So
that's your claim. Do you have evidence for this?
Well, you're claiming something over and above that, right?
No.
Go answer the door. Hang on.
No. Okay.
I'll pop on later.
Sorry, I stepped away for a minute. Did he bounce?
I don't know if he'll come back.
Oh, okay. Who's this other person? Other voices. Welcome.
Hey, I was on earlier. Sorry about that. This is Deepak. Hey, sorry about that. I had a couple of comments about the physics part. I know I have a little bit of, I'm not exactly a physicist, but I've got a lot of training, and I'm interested in the intersection of the argument you made about the second law of thermodynamics and the philosophy. I mean, what I have to say actually, it isn't. I'm an atheist, but what I have to say doesn't really contradict. It might actually support you in some ways, Otangelo. Like, what I want to say is that the right way to think about entropy and the beginning of the universe and so on is the real puzzle. I think that physicists admit is a puzzle is that the universe exists with 4 dimensions, 3 space-like and 1 time-like. And the time-like dimension we observe seems to have a point of low entropy on one side and high, and it seems to be evolving towards high entropy on the other side. And why is one end of it low entropy? Because the point is that it had to be that way for intelligent agents to exist, because if the universe, if at all time periods was in a point of thermal equilibrium, like high entropy, then like thinking agents just wouldn't exist, right? Like we are agents that take high entropy states and bring them into low entropy states. So that's the right way to, like, I feel like people often get really confused when arguing about time and then stepping back and talking about timeless entities like God and so on. But really, before time comes entropy. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Angelo, are you satisfied?
What before time comes entropy?
Yeah, in a sense, conceptually, right? Like we observe a passage of time, right? Which is really there's a direction there's a particular dimension of the universe which exhibits a directionality, right? It's a direction in which on one side there's more entropy and the other side there's low entropy. And we can only exist as thinking agents because of that gradient, because of that difference, along that dimension. So if it weren't for that, then we would be using some other dimension, right?
Yes, but my entire point is that there is no physical mechanism known which brings you to a low entropy state.
Correct. And physicists do it. Sorry, go on.
So how do you go from a dead universe to a low entropy state again? There is no answer to that.
Correct. I think you're right that there is no, like, physicists would admit that it is one of the many remaining puzzles in physics, right? Like, why does one end of the universe temporally seem to have low entropy? And there are partial explanations, like, put forward by physical theories that haven't been proven yet, right? Like string theory claims that once you get to like the region of the Big Bang, the effect of gravity actually leads to universes that look like they would have low entropy. And I don't actually completely understand the physics of that, but
then you have to ask yourself, where does the gravitational force come from? It has to be created as well, together with the other forces. And then, of course, you have to ask yourself as well, how were they finely tuned in order to permit a life-permitting universe with atoms and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I actually honestly do think, as an atheist, that questions like, why is the universe seemingly fine-tuned for interesting things to happen, right, is a weak argument for deism.
It is not about that it seems fine-tuned. I think science isn't disputing that claim, but that is an inference from the scientific evidence and investigation that actually it is finely tuned in many ways, and that, of course, demands an explanation. That's why many resort, in order to avoid God, to multiverses and string theory and so forth.
Yeah, I understand what you're coming. The reason I'm kind of saying seemingly is because when you say tuned, it seems to like imply that it was a volitional act. It was like a choice, right, to tune it. Whereas physicists are, looking for explanations of the universe's character that come, like, that are similar to the puddle asking why the ditch it sits in is like seemingly fine-tuned for its existence, right? Whereas,
I see that objection all the time. Mm-hmm. The problem is that you actually require as well an explanation why there is a finely tuned universe at all, starting with the Big Bang, which has to be finely tuned, the cosmological constant, which has to be finely tuned, the four fundamental forces and how they relate to each other has to be fine-tuned. The dimensions of the atoms, of the protons, electrons, neutrons, the size which defines the forces which interact together has to be finely tuned. You have to have a right relation of sizes. If the proton wouldn't be 1,830 times bigger than an electron, then you wouldn't have the right interaction of the electromagnetic forces with the weak and strong strong forces. and you wouldn't have atoms, and you wouldn't have a life-permitting universe and atoms whatsoever. You would have probably a universe just with hydrogen or something like that. And I mean, we are not talking here about just one or two fine-tuned constants, but hundreds. And that goes down to the right galaxy, to the right planet, to the right atmosphere, to the right crust, to volcanoes, to the moon, which does have the right distance, the right size of the moon, and so forth. I mean, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of constants which must be just right. And if you sum up the odds, then it is such a hugely large number that we cannot even fathom it. And of course, that demands an explanation. Why is there a finely tuned universe which permits life rather than not?
I think you're just assuming that it's finely tuned.
No, that's a scientific fact, Tom. I can give you the link. You can put it in.
No, finely tuned implies that there's intent, right?
Well,
so what if we just what if we just put all the particles in the Yahtzee cup and then threw them, and then like it just happened? There is a world that can inhabit life, right? That's not fine tuning. That just happened to be what came up. But you're looking at it after the fact and assuming, oh, because like the particles arranged in this order, then it must have been finely tuned.
No. The fact
That's exactly what you're doing.
No, listen. The universe is fine-tuned to permit atoms and life. This is a fact. And if you dispute it, I'll give you the link. Go and study the evidence.
But Otangelo,
I don't know what you think I'm disputing.
Otangelo, one thing that people do try to like argue about, I mean, it's far from settled, is the question of like, okay, so there are some constants that could have different values, like philosophically, right? Like metaphysically, they could have had any value. They happen to have values that support certain chemistries and so on. Like, are there different values of those constants that might not have? You might not get hydrogen atoms, but you get like, I don't know, a different kind of complexity altogether, like unobtainium or something, right? Which would support some other kind of complex arrangement with the possibility of something like life. Nothing we recognize as life.
The thing is, if you don't have the right expansion rate, you have no universe whatsoever. It would probably either recollapse into itself, into the singularity, or it would expand too fast, and then you would have just a universe void of anything, of no stars, no planets, no life, anything. So that also demands an explanation.
Yeah, I'm just not sure. I'm happy to admit that it leads to like a weak reason for me to believe that maybe there is some kind of intent, some kind of deism out there.
Well, if you conclude theism, then I congratulate you, because then you have already moved a big step forward from atheism or agnosticism.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, I mean, I would consider it a possibility, right? I would say that it's weak evidence for like. I would say
that the fine tuning of the universe is one of the most fantastic evidence which we have that indicates a fine tuner.
I disagree.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, Otangelo.
Hi, Peter.
Here's why I disagree, Otangelo. How finely tuned is the rainforest to sustain fish living there?
What?
How finely tuned is the rainforest for fish living there?
I don't know what you mean by that question.
Exactly. So you look at it from the wrong angle. Life evolved in a way where the conditions are predicting how life should evolve there. So we see no fish in the rainforest for the exact same reasons we don't see camels in the oceans. Because life adapts to its environment. So saying that something is fine-tuned, yeah, oceans are fine-tuned for fish and other aquatic animals you won't see on land. So is now land not fine-tuned? Yes, it is, because there are animals living on the land. So why aren't fish living on the land if the land is fine-tuned as well? You're looking at it from a wrong angle. If the conditions of the universe would have been different, then life that would eventually, because according to scientists, life would find a way to develop. We would have completely different life. And there are scientists who are proposing that on other planets, we may not have carbon-based life. We could have silicon-based life. And they've made models and they predict that it's absolutely possible for silicon-based life to form. I recently watched someone made a virtual museum of extraterrestrial life. It's fascinating what they come up with, just based on things that science has investigated in the past.
Peter, did you actually listen to what I said previously when you came in?
I've heard you make that argument more than once, also in talks that you and I had in private. So
okay, then it seems you have not understood it.
I have. I'm
No,
saying that
it seems like Otangelo is sitting here and he's saying, I can't believe, here I am, and I was one sperm out of 5 to 10 million. I can't believe it. How? This demands an explanation, right? And then he looks around at everybody. He's like, "Oh my God! Every single other person, they were one sperm out of 10 million. This demands an explanation. How could this be?" Right? You're looking at it backwards.
Tom, my mind is in the gutter. So what you're basically stating is that particular vagina was perfectly formed for that particular sperm to get Otangelo into being.
I think, to come to Otangelo's defense, I do see a small difference, a difference between all these other, what you guys are pointing to is the anthropic principle, right? Like, we shouldn't be surprised that we were the one sperm out of the millions, to hit that vagina, because, well, you wouldn't be around to ask that question if you weren't, right?
Right.
And that applies to and that applies to questions like why was this planet the one that we grew up on, and why was the fish in the rainforest and so on. The difference is, as far as we know, there is only one universe, right? I mean, there are theories of multiverses and stuff, but no evidence. They're just, they might exist, and that might actually, if they existed, then I think there's no more puzzle, right? We're the one universe in that multiverse that had the right physical constants for some enough complexity for life. But
even if you take only our planet, there's diversity on our planet. We have extremophiles. So we have I forgot the real name. We've got the water bear that can survive in space. Mm-hmm. We've got organic life in volcanic places around the planet. In extremely hot geysers, there's still organic life. We've got life on the poles. So the fine-tuning doesn't have to be that specific, because we know already that in extreme conditions we can still have life.
Here's another thing about fine-tuning. Let's say, oh my God, if you change this law just a tiny bit, then the Earth would be just devoid of life. But guess what? It's possible that changing that law just a tiny bit resulted in another previously inhabitable planet becoming habitable. You understand, Otangelo?
Exactly.
Okay, you guys are addressing something which is.
So that means that it's not really fine.
Can I answer, please? Can I answer, please, Tom?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. What I said is, without fine-tuning, you have no universe whatsoever. You need the right conditions, initial conditions, and the right constants, and the right physical laws, and the right strength.
Can you demonstrate that?
Can I finish, please? You need all this in order to have a universe whatsoever, and a life-permitting universe, because otherwise there would either be no universe whatsoever, or one which is not life permitting. So the entire poodle analogy isn't relevant in regards of the fact that the initial conditions of the universe also require to be finely tuned, and that also demands an explanation. The only alternative, if you guys want to exclude a fine tuner, is an ensemble of maybe an infinite number of bubble universes or multiverses, which have different constants and fine-tuned parameters, and one by chance happens to be ours. That's your alternative. If you want to stick to a multiverse, fine, be it. But then you have another problem. Where did that ensemble of attempts of creating universes come from?
I got a question. How do you know that otherwise the universe isn't possible? How did you test this?
I can back up a little bit of what Angelo is saying here, which is that even like I think physicists like Sean Carroll do say that this is true, right? That if you do change the constants by some amount, you don't end up with the universes that look different. You end up mostly with universes that don't have anything in them at all. Like imagine like a universe that just had like one off-on switch, right? It could turn from off to on and on to off. You can't have anything complex there or anything anything that can ask questions of itself, right?
Exactly.
Right. So
you couldn't have planets, you couldn't have life, you couldn't have chemistry, you couldn't have the periodic table. You would have a universe just with hydrogen, and that's it. You would have basically a void and vacant universe without anything in it.
So physicists do consider it a puzzle, but one in which is not really well understood. Like this is also like his response to this is, I think, basically to admit, yes, there is some question there to be answered, but and if you want to see the hand of a creator there, maybe. But for example, like how do you even know which is more likely now? Like we have a creator explanation or we have a multiverse explanation. I don't have any prior in my mind for which is more likely, right? Like I don't have a lot of different multiverses to experiment with to see whether it's, given what I see, is it more likely that it points to a creator or to a multiverse?
Well, then you have to ask what is the cause of that supposed multiverse, because even if there would be a multiverse, that also would require a multiverse generator, which also would require specific constants and fine-tuning in order to generate multiverses and these different constants and so forth. So you are basically just moving the problem and the question mark a step further away.
Right. So you're trying to apply a tag sort of argument to the multiverse, and that I think reduces to the argument to whatever Tom and Danny were pointing to earlier. I would say I would mostly agree with that. So,
I still have two problems with all of this. First of all, we can't look past Planck time because our laws of physics no longer apply when you go past Planck time. So we need to come up with a different set of laws of physics. We need new math to figure out what happened there. If that is the case before Planck time, how can you make any predictions on how other universes may exist based on completely different laws of physics? You can't investigate that. You cannot even make claims about it. And the other thing is, Otangelo, and we've talked about this, you just interchange reality with a God. What if reality is all there is and everything is within reality causing different things? Then, because if you come up with a God who has no explanation, God just always was there, that's special pleading. I could do the exact same thing for reality. Everything that exists for existence itself. It had no origin. It had no cause, just like your God had no cause. Because if it's possible for your God to have no cause, then it automatically follows that it is possible for existence to have no cause.
that are the two possibilities on the table, Peter, which we try to figure out which one is the better cause-adequate explanation.
Well, we know but they're not equal, because existence is a thing. We know it exists.
But you're conflating now.
Nothing. We have
Peter,
nothing about a God.
You are conflating our existence. That's the evidence, and we try to explain it, and we have two competing hypotheses. One is a creator at the bottom of reality, an intelligent, necessary being, and the other there is not. Okay, so we have to figure out which of these two possibilities have more explanatory power, right?
But one is a possibility. The other one still hasn't been demonstrated to even be a possibility. That is the difference between the two claims.
Well, is there a logical impossibility for an eternal, intelligent, powerful, necessary creator to exist at the bottom of reality?
It's also not impossible for a universe creating pixies to exist. But until someone comes up with a good argument that it is possible for them to exist, or plausible for them to exist, you don't take those into consideration, because you posted a dichotomy. Either it's existence or it's a God. I could come up with at least 10 different other explanations, which are not existence, which are not God, just with my own fantasy. Are you now saying that all of those, when I come up with them, immediately become plausible explanations for the universe?
No, but what I am saying, that whatever explanation you come up with, it will always fall into one of the two categories. One is the no God category, the bucket where there are no gods, and the other where there is some kind of a being which is eternal and intelligent. That are the two buckets.
Why does it have to be a being?
Well, it's not why. The question is if it is possible. And once it's possible,
I come up with a cause, but it is a being.
Can I finish, please? Once it is a possibility, it is on the table to be considered and to be analyzed, and for us to think about it, if it makes sense and if it is plausible or not.
I'm just saying it doesn't have to be a being. I can come up with other explanations that don't involve a being, don't involve existence to be the preconditional thing, don't involve a God to be the preconditional things. You can come up with pretty much any explanation you want, as long as you've got good imagination. My question to you was, if I do come up with things like this, will you, Otangelo, automatically consider those to be plausible explanations, possible explanations? And I don't think you will.
Well, so you are accusing me of being biased, Peter?
No, I'm literally asking you. I said, I do think that you will not accept those. I'm not saying you won't, but that's what I get from how you're talking. So, that's why I'm asking.
Right.
I'm open to consider them. Bring the evidence and we consider and investigate it, Peter.
Let me read this really quick because I have to stop everything for Super Chat. Does the thought of God entail the use of some form of exerted energy transformation? If so, does this form of energy exist independently of God? Thank you, Mitch Meserole. Thank you.
Like, I feel like that question is somewhat it's not well defined, because energy, I think of as generally being defined within the scope of the universe, and most people's conception of God is something outside the universe. So I don't know how you'd connect like energy, which is a physical quantity in this universe, with. So,
Otangelo, going back to what you just said, you said come up with the evidence. Why do I need to come up with evidence for another explanation when you don't have to come up with evidence for a God? Why are are we now suddenly we have double standards?
No, we don't have double standard. You ask
We
me
do.
for evidence, I will provide you the evidence. If you think that your proposition is more
You
case
have evidence for God?
well, can I finish, please, Peter?
Sure.
Okay, so if you think that you have a solid case for naturalism, hey, be my guest, bring the evidence, and we analyze it together.
But that wasn't what I said. What I said is, if I come up with an alternate explanation, so not existence, not God, then your first thing is bring me the evidence. So apparently our universe existence isn't enough evidence for the proposition that I'm putting forward. So I need other evidence for my proposition, which then leads me back to you proposing a God other than the known universe, everything we know. What is your evidence for God? Because that is literally what you're asking from me if I come up with an alternative explanation.
Hey guys, can I make a comment quickly? Then I have to go.
Sure.
This kind of addresses like what you've been discussing. I think like you between the two of you, you've listed out the two most likely. Well, the two you've exhaustively listed out the two possibilities, right? Like either the universe is just a brute fact, right? It exists of itself, or it needs it's best explained by some kind of unitary entity that created it, a God. And I think ultimately, like, based on evidence alone, we don't have enough evidence to, in my opinion, there's not enough like actual physical evidence to conclude one way or the other. So we're left with using our intuitions, guiding us, saying that which is a simpler hypothesis, applying Occam's razor, saying, is this a simpler hypothesis or that is a simpler hypothesis? And here, I think there's ultimately the difference between theists and atheists is that we come to it with a different version of Occam's razor in mind. For some people, the universe existing by itself with one less entity is the simpler explanation. And for other people, the universe is way too complex. It must have been created by such a unitary, like a single entity having created it all is the simpler hypothesis. And one of us is probably using induction the right way or using Occam's razor the right way, and the other one isn't. And I'm not sure in my lifetime we'll ever know the answer for sure. So thanks.
Yeah, I think you are quite well-versed and intelligent interlocutor. If you want to leave your email in the side chat and continue this conversation, I'll be more than happy to get in touch with you, and we can eventually raise other questions and have some dialogue.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been fun talking with all of you. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Nice meeting you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
So can I ask?
Brenda. Yeah, go ahead.
Welcome. Can I ask Otangelo? So I understand that currently the debate is at either God or what? Naturalism explains the universe. Is that correct?
Brenda, I refuse to have a conversation with you, and
God.
I will not answer anything of what you're asking. If you want to have interlocution with the other participants in the chat room, then I'm fine with it, but I will not have any further conversation with you.
Why is that? Done. Why is that? What seems to be the problem? Otangelo?
You've been put on the troll list. You've been put on.
Otangelo.
What the hell?
Let me jump in. This is what you told me. 3 months ago, and we've settled our differences. We got to a point where we think we have some common ground, and we can now actually have a conversation. Is that possible to do the same thing with Brenda? Maybe even offline. I don't know.
Maybe offline, but not now.
Well, I think that Otangelo is upset because in a previous conversation, I said that his hypothesis that the reason the multiverse was proposed by physicists was to get rid of the Christian God. And I said that was a conspiracy theory, and he rage quit when I said that.
Well,
I'm just bringing it up. Hold on.
That's again, listen, that is not true. And again, I do not want to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, well then you can just sit down and be quiet then. You can just sit down.
Well,
so that's my understanding. Yeah. So one of the problems with saying that God did it is that God has no explanatory power. What explanatory power is the ability to explain something in terms of something else that we know, right? So I explain some physical process in terms of another physical process that I already know. We do not know that there is any such thing as a God. And so God cannot explain anything because God, it just can do anything. And a deity that is that has the ability to explain everything ultimately explains nothing. So this isn't even what the former person who was in here said. This is just agree to disagree. It isn't even that, because the God concept cannot explain anything. It isn't even on the table. You have to explain things in terms of other things that you already know. We know of no such God. Therefore, God cannot have any explanatory power.
And that was what I was getting to as well, and I wanna throw out to both Brenda and Otangelo, if I can help mediate so you can end up talking to each other again, I'll be more than happy to. My email is on the channel, on the Gonna Go For It channel. So if you want me to help out, I'm more than happy to do that.
Sure, I don't know what the problem is, because it literally is a conspiracy theory to say that the reason that physicists came up with the idea of the multiverse is in order to deny God is a conspiracy theory. I don't care. I'm not heartbroken. I'm not despondent.
No, Brenda, I got that. Otangelo says that he has a different reason why he doesn't want to talk to you. I'll be honest and I'll be open about what happened. I trolled Otangelo for a long time, so he had good reasons not wanting to talk to me. I've recently changed my position in as to how I go into conversations like this, and I think it is beneficial to have these conversations. So that's why I put in an effort and had a talk with Otangelo, so to see whether or not we could bury our differences. And so I'm only offering that to both of you. If you need a mediator, I'd be more than happy to do that. I think I can be impartial and take it offline and see whether or not we can fix this, because I think I've seen you, Brenda, on Speech Channel a couple of times. I've seen Otangelo around. I think people would benefit if the two of you could have a conversation. That's
so. It may be that it is not related to Otangelo rage quitting on our recent talk on my channel. Well, it may be that because
phrases like rage quitting aren't going to help to.
It's literally what he did. I don't care that much. I don't care.
Okay.
Well, to be fair, I rage quit on a Christian channel yesterday. I got back later, so the term rage quit is something that we shouldn't take too serious.
I'm not interested in protecting the egos of certain people, so I don't care. So the point is, I think that maybe he's reacting because I'm on Darth's no talk list, and perhaps. Otangelo is being a simp for Darth.
I don't think so.
That might be. Well, he is pretty. Because prostrate. He is prostrate before the great Darth.
Then he
Brendan, could you turn your gain down?
Then he wouldn't talk to me.
You're kind of loud. Skinny Pete, does Otangelo have a rebuttal to the argument Tom made to Darth? If so, does he think Darth is a coward for not engaging Tom, asking for a friend?
Well, I mean, I was pretty clear when I asked Darth, and he agreed with me. I think the true dichotomy, either there is a God or there is no God, and either there is the Christian God or there is not the Christian God. If there is not the Christian God, then theoretically it could be possible that eventually another concept of God is true. I don't see any logical contradiction that this eventually could be possible. So.
Now I remember it very differently, because I remember you and him talking about it, and I agree with your position. Now, The dichotomy is going to be that either the Christian God exists or the Christian God does not exist, right?
Right.
And that's a dichotomy, right? That's just
Yeah.
A and its negation, right?
Yeah.
Now, I agree with you there. So when you said to Darth, you said, "Hey, Darth, what are you talking about, bro? This ain't a dichotomy, man." Right? You're saying either A or B. Why is that a dichotomy? Now, if you're saying that you guys were coming to some agreement on that, that's news to me. I didn't hear anything.
Well, he agreed with what I said, that the dichotomy is either a God or no God, or either the Christian God or no Christian God. He agreed.
Yeah, he
with
agreed.
me on
That's
that.
a dichotomy. He agreed that A and not A is a dichotomy. But the question is, was he in agreement with you that either the Christian God exists or no God exists is a dichotomy? Did you think that you were in agreement with him on that?
Well, I don't agree with that. I don't know if he still holds that this is a true dichotomy. I'm not sure right now.
You think that he changed his mind in like a week on something that he thinks that he knows in a way that it can't be wrong about, Otangelo? Is that
Well-
what you're positing?
Well, I would say like that, Tom. I wouldn't go to the definition of the Christian God specifically, but I would go to the biblical God, which entails that if the universe had a cause, it had a if the universe had a beginning, it had a cause, and that entails that the cause must have very certain specific things, like being eternal, being non-physical, existing in a non-time dimension, being conscious, and so forth. And if you lay these things down and then compare to the different concepts of religion, then you will come to the conclusion that only the Bible has the right, compatible definition which goes with that. And I made actually a video on that, and if you want, I can put a link and you guys can look it up. So I would say that besides the biblical God, there can be no other concept which matches with reality.
How can there be a cause before the first cause?
Hold on a second. I want to hammer this out really quickly. So you're saying, I want to get you on record here, you don't agree with the statement either the Christian God exists or no God exists. You don't agree with that.
Yes, I don't agree with that.
Okay. Why do you think Darth thinks that?
Ask him.
You were talking to him about it. He won't talk to me about these things.
I can give you the explanation.
Look, when
why
people
I
ask him
disagree
about
with
this,
him. I can give you the reasons why I disagree with him, but if he thinks that is the case, ask him, because I don't know. I didn't ask him why he thinks that it is specifically about the Christian God. I would say that besides the concept of the biblical God, there can be no other concept.
we're not talking about that, though.
Reality.
That's great that you have that opinion, all right, about the biblical God. That's a different question, right? The question we're talking about now is, why is this guy saying either the Christian God exists or no God exists? Why?
I don't know.
Do you think that he thinks that's a dichotomy?
Ask him. I don't know.
Oh, come on. You know better than to ask me to just go get the answers from Darth or
Well,
Otangelo. Come on, right?
I can ask him, but I don't have an answer right now to your question.
Okay, well, don't tell me to go ask him. You and I both know that he's just going to say, Tom, how old are you? This is sophistry, right? We all know what answers I'm going to get from him. Raphael,
At least you get him to
Otangelo,
talk
I'm
to
not
you.
going to say that, wrongly believes he can use the DD script without being belligerent and be excessive. Let me tell you guys something. Like, Otangelo is, I would not put him in the category of like a Darth minion, right? Now, Darth minion almost never disagrees with Darth, right? And Otangelo will disagree with Darth in a way which makes Darth uncomfortable, right?
Or correct him on a live stream.
Right. So you can say what you want about Otangelo and other things, but I'm telling you, he's not a bona fide Darth minion. Acolyte,
I agree, and I can confirm that. I've seen him not only correct him, but telling him to do better on a live stream. I haven't seen any of his minions ever do that.
And you guys also have to understand that if you're a Christian and you're hanging out in the Darth room, right? If you want to stay in there and have, be Otangelo and talk and interact and stuff, there are some social pressures that you're going to have to abide by. You rock the boat too much, and you're gonna stick up. And when you stick up, we all know what happens, right? So Darth, for the time being, is committed to tolerating Otangelo, because there was this one time where Otangelo said, "Oh, they're being mean to me, and they called me your bootlicker." Which, by the way, Otangelo, I never ever called you a Darth bootlicker. I don't know where you got that from. So, just to clear that one up.
Tom, I got a different hypothesis. I think Darth is really happy with Otangelo because he's running out of attention. And now Otangelo has popped up, and since Otangelo has been on Darth's Discord server, Darth has been popping up on several channels again, and people have allowed him in. So I think that Darth is a lot more dependent on Otangelo than the other way around. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it.
No, Darth has his own gravitational pull, and Otangelo is just, he's just a planetary body that's been ejected into, interstellar space. But yeah, Raphael, that's not what I said. Yeah, I know, but I'm not gonna say things that are possibly offensive, because I just generally don't want to do that. If you notice, when I debate these people, even when it's Darth, right, who are just insulting me nonstop, I don't insult them back, right? It only makes them look bad. I debated J. Robin. They're calling me, autistic, and they're calling me this and that. I debate with Ezra. He calls me all kinds of names. Like, look, it's not going to do me any good to insult these people when you're debating them, right? Especially when you got to keep in mind, these are the Christians who are ostensibly the ones using all the insults, right? They're only making themselves look bad. And I'm not going to have anything to gain by it.
Let me tell you, I disagree. Let's suppose that I go to his stream, to the Discord channel, he's there, and then I tell, well, I just was in a live stream with Doc, Pine Creek, and then he starts ranting about how Pine Creek is a slimy guy and so forth. And to be honest, I like Pine Creek, and the few interactions that
I like Pine Creek too.
Yeah, and the few interactions which I had with him, I enjoyed them, and I said it to Darth. So I mean, that constant rants about how you, Tom, are this and that, and Pine Creek is this and that, and Peter is scumbag and this and that.
you had to emphasize mine, right, Otangelo? You just had to do that because you really wanted to call me a scumbag without insulting me. Go on. It's okay.
I mean, I have a policy when I don't like to have any more an interaction with an atheist, and I say simply, hey, goodbye, good luck, and that's it, and I move on. I don't think that it is productive to name call atheists, and I said it many times. I want to create to build bridges and not walls, and this constant name calling and how old are you, and well, you talk like a 15-year-old and so forth. I mean, I said to him, listen, it's your style.
Don't make me get my soundboard, Otangelo. Don't make me. Yeah, I want to have a role play.
Yeah,
Also.
yeah. I mean, I said to him, if you want to go for it, it's your style. I mean, I cannot dictate to anyone how you guys should have a conversation, but I don't think it is productive. And recently I told him, listen, if you want to have a private conversation and it's still open, he didn't respond. In regards of the name calling, I don't think it is a good way to have conversations and to label atheists with this and that. I don't think it is productive. It doesn't lead anywhere.
Yeah, well, it makes him look weak, is what it does, right? When your rebuttals are all, oh, Tom's a child, he's a but this and that. How old is he? Blah blah blah. You know, he makes $20 a month on YouTube. By the way, that's disproven demonstrably on this very stream, thanks to super chats like Mikhail. But it just makes
You're
him
making
look
more
bad.
money. You're
Okay,
making more money
let
of
me-
Darth than Darth is.
Okay, let me answer to that question.
Let me just say something about that real quick. I have said for the longest time, I'm on record as saying that I think if Darth actually put effort into this, right, he could be making 6 figures a year on YouTube right now, considering that he's been at this for 10 years. Easy.
Definitely.
Well, I suggested him to create an own YouTube channel, and he would have 10,000s of subscribers. I'm pretty sure about that, and I don't know why he isn't doing it. But
And maybe it's just not his interest. Tom, I
know
bits and pieces of the conversation you had with Darth Dawkins, and I appreciate what you're doing because you're making you're showing an example to Darth Dawkins of how atheists are cordial. Because he's not satisfied with me being cordial, but I hope more and more people use this kind of approach because I think it does reflect well on the atheism demographic. So thank you for doing that.
No problem.
yeah, you have always been cordial. I mean, you know the opinion that Darth has about you. It's not my opinion. I think you have never shown to be rude or name calling or things like that. And I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Otangelo. I feel the same way about you. Like my interactions with you have all been quite good. I don't go into any of the name calling at all. There's people who do it and they have a lot of fun with it, but I just I prefer to try to use the names that people prefer to use as best I can because then it doesn't detract from good quality conversation and it leaves the other person feeling more respected, and so that helps to have a more constructive conversation in the end.
That's literally why I changed my approach and why I made the effort to reach out to Otangelo and see whether or not we could bury our differences because it's not productive.
Yeah, let me just answer to the previous question. If I consider Darth a Christian, yes, I consider Darth a Christian. I was surprised actually today. I was in the stream at the Discord, and someone said that Darth doesn't consider me a Christian, and my answer was, I don't care what other people think if I am or if I'm not a Christian. This is something intimate between me and my Lord, and if my Lord knows it, then that's sufficient for me. Okay,
That's interesting that you don't remember that because it was a conversation between you and Darth. And I have a recording of it. I'll find it and I'll give it to you.
Yeah,
But
no problem. I mean,
I'm just saying
amongst so many interactions, I really don't remember it. But to answer the question, yes, I regard Darth as a Christian.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I think it's odd that you wouldn't remember it because when someone says, well, another Christian, especially one that you might look up to, and at least in some ways, tells you that you're not saved.
Well, I don't.
I would think I would.
I don't remember it now. Let me clarify again what my motivation is to be at the Discord channel. I am fascinated by the pre-sup arguments. I've heard them several times for about 2 years or so being brought forward by Darth, and I really didn't understand them, and I also didn't agree with his way of interaction and approach. And I am joining the streams because I try to understand the arguments. I understand them better now, but I as well think that he should try to break them down further in a way that they are better to be understood.
But Otangelo, you're thinking that that's Darth's mission, is to make this pre-sup philosophy or theology known to people. But his job, he states, is just to shut the unbelievers up. And it's up to the Holy Spirit to convince anyone of anything.
That's been a lot of research.
I hear him saying that once I can shut them up with their atheism is senseless and meaningless and wrong, then they can start to think and reflect about their atheism.
Okay, Otangelo, can I bring it back to what we had earlier in the conversation? You didn't answer because Tom had to read out a super chat, and I'm still interested in. No. That's cool. I mean, you always need to acknowledge the people who throw money at you. That's a given. But you did make the claim that if I come up with an alternative explanation, I need to have evidence. And that's where I stated. So the current reality, the universe as we know it, everything we've come across through science, is not evidence. So what is your evidence for a God then? Because then you will have to have the exact same standard for your God. So nothing in the universe is evidence for God. There has to be other evidence, right?
No, let me clarify. I understand the physical universe as the evidence. That's what requires an explanation. Right?
But can it also be evidence then for an alternative explanation that I can come up with? Because we have the universe. Attributing as evidence for something, if we can just pick something and then say, well, this is evidence for it, then it would be evidence for my explanation as well, wouldn't it?
Peter, we are looking basically at the same evidence and try to explain it. And as I laid out previously, you can come up with a myriad of different explanations, but I still hold the position that there are just basically two buckets. One is where there is the no God hypothesis, and the other where there is the God hypothesis. These are the two possible explanations that there's a true dichotomy. Either there is a God or not. I agree. Now you can.
That's not the Christian God, though.
Yeah, now
I think there's.
But my question was specific. If I can come up with an alternate explanation that isn't existence or reality or a God, then your response literally was, then you need to come up with evidence. So if the known universe isn't evidence in the thing that I can come up with, how come it is evidence for your God?
Okay, let me clarify that. Maybe I I didn't use the right word. The point
is the language barrier, Otangelo. I told you it's the language barrier.
No, if you posit that the no God hypothesis is the more case adequate explanation, then be my guest and bring forward, explain why no intelligence has more causal power than intelligence.
I
didn't say my explanation had no intelligence.
Well, I can give you a statistical argument as to why, like, the no God hypothesis is stronger than, like, a hypothesis that invokes being of some kind.
Yeah, but the reason I wanted to get at this, and I think Otangelo, and this might just be the language barrier. So I'm not saying that you're just avoiding it.
I think what Peter is trying to iterate.
Hold on,
Okay.
Immutable. So you specifically said that if I come up with a different explanation, I have to have evidence, and that to me brings up the question: if the known universe is not evidence for my explanation, then it cannot be evidence for the God explanation. So in order for you then to still hold to the God explanation, you have to have other evidence than the known universe and everything in it. And my question would be, what other evidence is there? Because you said I'm more than happy to provide you with the evidence, so I'm all ears.
Well, I think the entire thing which you said now is a little bit confusing, but let me clarify that. The physical universe is what we have at hand. It requires an explanation. There are two possible competing hypotheses. One is where there is an intelligent, powerful creator which is eternal and necessary at the bottom of reality, which instantiated everything, which is then dependent on it. That's the one proposition. And in that bucket, you can put Yahweh, the biblical God, you can put the God of Hindus, whatever you want. And on the other side, you have the no God hypothesis, where there is no creator and the reality simply just is, or was instantiated by unguided, non-intelligent random mechanisms.
That's a false dichotomy.
So,
because there could be an immaterial cause for this universe, and I know that will just lead you to a rabbit hole with an infinite amount of immaterial causes. But we're only getting to the cause of the universe, not any further yet. And that can be an immaterial thing. So it's not a true dichotomy that it's either the universe has always existed, is eternal, or there has to be an intelligent cause to the universe. There can be an immaterial cause as well. So I don't hold to your dichotomy there.
Okay, just give me 2 minutes. I'm right back. Okay.
Okay.
I mean,
Peter,
we've got two competing hypotheses, right? We've got the God and the not God, and you should be able to make predictions based on each of those hypotheses, right?
I agree, but the one that Otangelo just put up was not a true dichotomy. It also was not God and not God. It was God and the natural world.
Right.
Well,
I agree.
The proper dichotomy would be being and not being, right? There's nothing about, like, God particularly as being a being that, like, makes it special among things that have, like, creative potential. Like, other beings that exist could have creative potential, right? We know that, like, other organisms that are not humans can create things, and it's not hard to imagine, and also likely, that there are organisms out there that are more sophisticated than us, that are far better than us at creating things.
Yeah, I was talking to as far as the predictions thing. I was talking to that's the first thing like I talked about with Otangelo.
Yeah. I mean, that's where it has to go, right? I mean,
it has to. I don't.
There's nothing that isn't predicted on the God. Like, it's just completely ad hoc, right? So you can say on atheism, if life exists, what would you expect it to look like? Well, it would be extremely rare. It would be some really random chemical accident. And the only way that you can ensure that that'll eventually happen is if the universe is really, really big and really, really old and has lots of little chemistry sets going on all over the place, right? And lo and behold, that's what we see. But if you just say, well, what kind of universe would you expect with God? Well, it could be anything. God doesn't, I mean,
literally anything.
We could look down in our cells and we wouldn't see these vastly complex machines. We just see little Jesus crosses running around. You know, it doesn't make any sense that they follow any sort of law at all. God doesn't need laws for his own mind to work. I mean, he doesn't need physical laws, right?
No,
God, it just is, right?
If God wanted, sorry.
Oh,
what I was going to say
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that if God wanted to will something, there's no reason he would have to depend on, like, some physical fact of the universe to draw it into existence. Right? He could magic it into existence if he truly desired to.
And that would be real evidence for God. I mean,
Yeah, that would be right. I mean, like if you showed, like if you did something that was completely unexplainable, like and actually just can't be explained, rather, like
Yeah.
by the laws of nature. For me, I would accept that as evidence of at least
Yeah.
something
Or-
like that's
or, if God made himself available for questioning to everyone on closed circuit TV, submits to all of our scientific tests and all that stuff, that would be pretty damn convincing.
Let me just say, I'm going to read you this this Veckel statement, because Veckel is such a loyal viewer and subscriber. Veckel, he makes this same comment on almost every single video I upload. Takes the time out of his day to boost me in the algorithm. Says, I thank God Almighty for these uploads. I've learned much from Darth and am now better empowered to defeat and expose the futility of atheism. Thanks, Tom Rabbit. And I have the same reply to Veckel every time. If you love these videos so much and you really think that, consider being a patron, Veckel. Consider being a patron for just $1 a month. Thanks, bud. To this day, still not a big thing. Makes me kind of skeptical of this.
makes you question the loyalty, doesn't it?
Yeah, makes him sound a bit insincere there.
Yes.
I think.
I know. It's there's the words, but there's not the commitment yet.
Have y'all seen Darth argue with a Muslim and proceed to do an internal critique about the inconsistencies in the Quran? Yet when Tom attempted to do the most basic internal critiques, he ran away and said, no, you can't even ask questions because it doesn't even make any sense in your worldview and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, the Muslim you're talking about must be different than the one I interacted with on Smokey's channel the other day. Khalil Allah. He's actually like really interesting. Like he's a very like recent Muslim convert. And the thing that like convinced him was the Kalam of all things.
That's unfortunate.
I mean, the thing is actually like the Kalam's a very basic argument, and it's kind of interesting.
I mean, at best, it proves that the universe had a beginning.
Yeah,
at best.
Yeah, so it's three premises. Everything which begins to exist has a cause.
A natural cause.
Well,
everything that we see that begins to exist has a natural cause, and that's always left out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always leaving. It's always leaving the cause ambiguous.
Well, but we know it's specific. The examples that we have are a natural cause.
How do we know that?
The universe had a natural cause. How do you know that?
Well, that's not a coherent question.
And actually, the physical universe is all natural that we know of. So,
for the second premise, I've got a great analogy. I think, if you get to it.
Otangelo, I mean, do you agree that everything that we see has a natural cause? Every example of something existing, other than the universe, because we've never witnessed one come into existence, everything that we see, we can point to a natural cause.
Really?
Yes.
Everything. Do you believe that?
Yeah.
Point to something that has a supernatural cause.
Oh, so how did life start?
I was waiting for that.
How did life start?
It started in a small warm pool.
How did it start? It started by physical processes which are being uncovered.
So I want to address something here. Otangelo.
Can you turn your volume down a little bit, Brenda? You're really loud.
I'm really sorry. I can never tell. Maybe you could inform me how I can adjust my volume on my end because I can't hear myself.
Go to the cogwheel at the bottom and then go to audio, and there's a slider where you can adjust your volume.
Yeah, but
you can also make it automatic.
Yeah. So, Otangelo, what do I need to do?
In terms of?
Well, he won't talk to me. So the question is, what do I need to do?
Okay.
He said that earlier. You need to solve it offline first. So that's why I said I'd be more than happy to help out with that if necessary.
Well, the only communication I have with him is over Discord. So he's free to email me or to message me on Discord. So I'm just curious what it is that I need to do. I can apologize for calling for saying that he had a conspiracy theory. I could do that. I could say it's not necessarily conspiracy theory. It is an invalid inference of intent. What?
Brenda, he did say he wanted to do that offline, so I think it might be best to just do that offline then.
Fine.
Yeah.
It's not going to be helpful for this conversation.
Okay.
But it's probably the only thing we have.
The question arises: what follows from an omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent God? And can we make inferences about what kind of universe we would live in if such a God existed?
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of problems with that. There's the problem of suffering. There's simply the problem that an omnipotent God could create any kind of universe. He doesn't need fine-tuning. He could make electrons conscious, willing agents. He could make anything.
Have you read that
life.
paper by
I have not.
Sababu? It's called Electrons in Love. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, there isn't any limitation to what he could do, and that was my, and then there's also the additional problem that if God is a necessary being, then necessarily everything he creates is also necessary, because this just follows the causal chains. If God is necessary, everything he creates is also necessary. We are contingent, so therefore we weren't created by God.
Unless you're a necessitarian.
Right.
I mean, yeah, the only difference, like semantically, to parse out is the contingency causal, or is it a sustaining contingency?
Right.
So I don't know what that means, a sustaining contingency. Could he revoke that sustaining contingency at any time? Then it seems pretty arbitrary.
Contingency, like a sustaining contingency, could be, for instance, like one example of a god, like that could create a universe, would be one that does create a universe, right? But in the process of doing so, fades into non-existence, because it happens to be the case that God uses all of its energy in order to create the universe,
or became the universe.
Right. So what sustains,
or something like that?
What sustains what sustains my existence right now is the fact that the particles I'm made out of, protons, electrons, and neutrons, basically. I know that there's more to be said about that, but they don't need anything external to continue to exist. Protons have never been observed to decay. As far as we know, they are eternal. So I should worship the eternal proton. Neutrons will decay and stuff, and they can alter and things like that. So,
and why is longevity a criteria for worship?
I don't know. So the point is that what sustains my existence is the underlying material out of which I'm made. Right?
The arrangement of that material, the pattern.
Yeah.
Real quick, there's another person once again. I would like to actually have kind of more of an active rotation of people. Is it possible? Maybe someone who's been here a while, maybe can free up a
I
spot?
can go since I am being what would the phrase be?
Deplatformed.
Deplatformed by Otangelo.
Brenda, if you want me to help out with this, shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy.
The only contact I have with Otangelo is Discord. I've made my email is pretty easy to figure out. It's at Gmail and it's B Bonassen. So there you go. Figure it out. I've been canceled. Okay.
I know.
For
shame.
Thank you.
I care.
Sorry.
Okay.
So many questions.
Otangelo, do you think the Kalam is a good argument?
Absolutely, but it is not. I mean,
Can I ask you one question about it?
I mean, just in saying that he became a Muslim because of the Kalam, that just staggers me, because that doesn't lead you.
I think you're hot micing anti.
It staggers me too, because the Kalam is a very weak argument, and it relies on a few false principles to work.
It leads you to a cause.
Can I ask you a question about it, Otangelo?
Go ahead.
So the second premise, can you tell me what according to you, the second premise of the column is?
According to me?
Everything-
No, Otangelo.
Oh,
Everything
okay.
that begins to exist has a cause. The universe had a beginning, therefore, the universe had a cause. So,
Okay, so when you say the universe had a beginning, I've come up with an analogy. You tell me whether or not that's a good analogy. Do you know the movie The Wizard of Oz?
I've not seen it. I know the movie, but I've not seen it.
Okay, the movie starts in black and white, and then the moment the girl is transferred to Oz, it's in color. Does the movie start when it goes into color, or
Yeah, you
is
brought that up, and I answered to you. I said,
yeah,
well,
and back then you didn't understand what I was trying to get at. So when you say the universe began to exist, are you saying that the singularity that the universe expanded out of didn't exist, or did that start to exist? And if so, how do you know this?
Yeah, the singularity was a starting point for the universe to expand.
It was a starting point, but did it start to exist?
Yes.
How do you know that?
There's a conceptual barrier there. Go ahead.
I'll be more than happy to send you a link. It's better than to discuss this here, Peter. but-
I'd rather hear it in your words. How do you know that?
Well, there are three main reasons. First is scientific evidence, the background radiation.
There's no
and so
scientific
forth.
evidence.
Well, that is scientific evidence, and the redshift and so forth. That's the scientific part. And then the second law of thermodynamics, which demonstrated the universe cannot go back eternally. And then the one which I said about adding time.
Hold on. Let's take these one at a time, because otherwise it's going to be a gish gallop and it's getting us nowhere.
Well, we had that already here.
No, we haven't. That's
Yes,
why I'm
we
bringing
did.
it up.
Yes, we did. We talked about this earlier in this.
We talked about it, but we didn't get to every single thing separately. So you said that we know that the singularity the universe expanded out of had a beginning, and my question is, where did you get that information? You don't have to be completely specific, but just give me a general idea.
I can. Well, there is a quote which I can search and then I can give it to you, where it says that the forces of the singularity, they are in direction of infinity, but they cannot be actually infinite. They had a beginning. These forces had a beginning at where the singularity started.
That still doesn't tell me where you got it from.
Yeah, I said to you, I can search the quote and then I can give it to you.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the fact is we don't know, right? Like the cosmic microwave background radiation is not the beginning of the universe. It's when light became decoupled from plasma, right? And that's like what?
Right.
600,000 years after the beginning of the universe. I mean,
200,000 about, but yes,
something like that. Yeah, some pretty long time, longer than 4,000 years or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, so we don't know, and as far as I understand, the notion of a singularity is somewhat incoherent, right? And we just don't know.
The notion of a singularity is not one that's sensical to speak about, because the laws of physics break down well before you hit the magnitude of a singularity. The singularity is kind of like an asymptote in a way. You get very, very close to a singularity, but it never, the physical description of a singularity doesn't really exist currently. It doesn't make sense to talk about.
Right. It seems like quantum theory precludes a true singularity.
Yeah, it's either the case that quantum theory has some very interesting way of kind of preventing singularities from actually, generating infinite density and infinite warped curvature, or that there's some other continuation or something beyond quantum mechanics that kind of helps massage our understanding of
immutable
singularities in your physics.
Do you see what Otangelo posted in the private chat here? And I think that's where the disconnect is, because that quote is talking about time, and time started with the Big Bang, with the expansion. That's where at least our conception of time started. We have no clue whether or not time exists outside of the universe, and if it does, in which way.
Well, so here's the thing about time, right? The first moment in which we can measure time, like observationally, at least to my knowledge, is the CMB, right? That's because this is when photons decoupled from plasma, things began to cool down enough where atoms could begin forming, electrons started to be bound with protons, and they started to actually emit light at specific wavelengths, and not just every wavelength possible.
Anti, you're hot micing like crazy, man.
Me?
Thank you. No, Anti.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. But the thing is, if there was time before the Big Bang, which we don't know, right? Even if there was, we don't know how much time that was, right? We don't know how long of an epoch of time that would have been, and that's because our physics can describe so much. But it could be, and we have good reason to believe that that because of this thing called the Planck time, which is the smallest possible time that's significant for any interaction, physical interaction to take place, that there was, a first moment of time, like that you can't keep pushing back this dial more and more and more. There was a time.
I need to read this before it gets too far off. I don't know if Otangelo's still here. It says, Raphael says, Didi and Otangelo can't answer. We use senses and observe them.
Observe them to interpret reality.
The interpreted reality, I think, is what it's saying.
How do they know they receive the true truth about the universe and know they are not deceived? Can't do it.
Yeah, it's the demon argument.
Well, here's the thing.
How do you know you're not being? It's the how do you know that you're not being deceived by an extremely clever demon type of thing.
No, it's even simpler than that. It's just saying how you. They're going to say that they know something in a way they can't be wrong. What does that even mean? What does that mean? So is that just super deluxe confidence? Because they're not going to want to say that. So if they know it in a way that they can't be wrong, and it's not super deluxe confidence, well, what do you mean by you know it in a way you can't be wrong?
Well, I mean, they could. One way they could. Go ahead.
Since Christ said, I know my sheep, and my sheep, they listen to my voice, and they recognize my voice. And that's basically it. And I don't go further than that. I did read the New Testament, the Gospels, and I recognize Christ as who he claims to be. Now, if you ask
who the Gospels claim Christ is.
Otangelo, let me play devil's advocate.
I would like.
Hold on. Let me play devil's advocate for the statement that you just made. I know my sheep and they recognize my voice. What does that make me?
Sorry, I didn't understand your question.
That makes you a goat.
Okay, you said, Jesus said, I know my sheep and they recognize my voice, and that's where you wanted to leave that. So I know my sheep and they recognize my voice. What does that make me? Am I now suddenly becoming a deity, or is that all it takes?
Maybe you need to understand that in a spiritual context, Peter.
Yeah, but I don't believe in spirituality, so that's going to be really difficult. So you have to find another way to point that out to me. I don't know what spiritual means. I don't have a working definition for spiritual.
Let me use an analogy here.
Sure.
I don't know how you met your wife. Okay, but
I don't either because I don't have one.
Okay, but just for you to understand what I mean, when I met my wife the first time, as soon as I saw her, I said, "That's her." And
That's
if
a
you-
feeling I recognize, but that's not spiritual.
okay, okay, yes, that's not spiritual, but I am using that as an analogy. Now, if you ask me, how did I know that it's her? Then I cannot answer you that question. I simply know it happened because I experienced it, but I cannot
I
go
think
deeper than that.
I could make a good explanation for why that happened to you. It is, and this is because this happened to you obviously later in life, not anywhere near your childhood. So while you were growing up, you developed preferences, and at some point you meet someone, and their exterior and the part that from the interior that you are presented with resonates with the things that over time have become your preferences, and that is why you could say, yeah, that's the one, because that one ticks all the boxes. And it's literally like that. She ticked all the boxes. Now, I'm pretty sure that after you met your wife, you had some disagreement, so she doesn't tick all the boxes. She's not a carbon copy of Otangelo, nor should she be. But that's different. It's still not, it doesn't even come close to describing what spiritual is.
Well, that's as far as I can go, Peter. It's difficult to go further than that. Maybe
I know.
Well, I don't even know.
let me-
First of all, I don't even know if Otangelo holds the view that he knows in a way he can't be wrong. Do you think that?
Well, I am absolutely sure that Christ is the true God and my Lord, and nobody can take that from me.
Yeah, but what you just said is compatible with just super deluxe confidence. My question was specifically, do you claim to know in a way which you can't be wrong about the Christian God being real?
I think that I cannot be wrong.
Isn't that a extremely dangerous position to hold if you're no longer open to having any of your beliefs falsified?
No, I think he's saying he can't be wrong, but that's with respect to like his reasoning and stuff, right? This is a very specific claim made by the presuppositionalists, which states that they receive a revelation that God is real, and that revelation is received in a manner which they could not be wrong. Do you affirm that? Because you're just
Tom,
talking about like, you know, your
I think
reasoning
that-
and you don't think you could be wrong about it.
Well, Tom, I think, as I said previously, and that isn't much sophistry into it, that the physical universe and the world testifies God's existence.
I mean, it testifies to being complex, but there's
Otangelo,
plenty of things.
Otangelo, do you think science is a good thing?
Absolutely.
Do you know
Look,
know that no one in science claims I cannot be wrong, because you could be presented at any given day or time with different evidence that would lead you to different conclusions. The part that I struggle with some Christians is that they have shut the door for new evidence to come in. They cannot be proven wrong, so they won't accept anything that could prove them wrong. Is that where you are at?
Well, Peter, I was asked the same question by Pine Creek, and Tom was present, and he asked me what would falsify my Christian belief, right? And of course, if the bones of Jesus would be found, then this would destroy the Christianity, because the core of the Christian faith is that Christ is.
It wouldn't.
There's nothing wrong with what Otangelo is saying, because the question was what would falsify it for him, right? It could be the case that Otangelo is just completely irrational, right? And if he found a Jolly Rancher, right, on the sidewalk, then it would falsify it for him. You guys are talking about something different.
Yeah,
you're talking
I
about
agree.
whether or not he's warranted in thinking that the Christian God is falsified because.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I meant for Otangelo. I mean, what would that look like? You find somebody says, "Hey, we found the bones of Jesus."
Well, the first question.
How would that go about? How would you go about saying, "Oh yes, now my faith in Jesus is not valid"?
Well, this would mean that the New Testament is false. It is falsified. And of course, that would destroy Christianity.
No, I mean, because you look at human DNA. Sorry, go ahead.
That would entirely falsify the Christian claim that Christ is God and that he resurrected and that he is now in heaven.
But wouldn't you just say those aren't the bones of Jesus? Or
no, it's stipulated that they are the bones of Jesus.
Well, let me modify my theology such that, I mean, in what way could you actually prove that these were the bones of Jesus, right?
Though no longer be the claim of the Christian religion.
Right.
It depends.
Well,
it depends.
That's not true. There are many different Christianities, especially if you go to 1st, 2nd, 3rd century Christianity. You have many different beliefs. You have adoptionist beliefs. You have
and also, I think that if Jesus was God, he could have ascended to heaven and leaving his body behind. There would be no problem.
It could have been
with
figurative
that.
ascent, right? Could have been
his spirit. Yeah, his spirit could have ascended into heaven, but not his.
Here's what I was saying, and I think I said this in the stream, Otangelo. So you have this problem, right? Bible says that Jesus rose from heaven, right? So it's not compatible with finding his bones. And then you find Jesus's bones, right? So now you have this contradiction that you need to resolve. Well, what you're talking about is your way of resolving is only one way to actually resolve. You can actually resolve it another way, right? So the way you're choosing to resolve the problem is that you're choosing to say, well, Christianity is false. That's one way to do it. You're ejecting that belief, right? But you could do it another way. You could actually say, I'm ejecting what I thought Christianity was. I was wrong about Christianity in this way. And you can eject it and resolve the problem that way. But you're choosing to just nuke Christianity and just like, oh, that's it. Christian God's false.
There's a third way you can do it as well, which is to say that how do we know that it is actually Christ's bones? That Well,
that's just stipulated. Jesus. That's irrelevant, actually, because it's just stipulated that there is bones, right? We can't talk about this hypothetical and just be like, okay, if we found Christ's bones, then he's falsified, and then be like, oh, by the way, what if it's not Christ's bones? It's just like it doesn't make sense to have the discussion.
Maybe something else.
I think there's an important point there, right? The important point is what is the rationalization process that goes through that go through, right? That all people go through, right? To try to maintain deeply held core beliefs that form the deep part of who they are. I mean,
I think the other
Otangelo, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in one of our discussions you were denying that endogenous retroviral DNA was evidence for common descent from chimpanzees. And so these are like, we have the DNA that shows with virtual statistical certainty that we are commonly descended from, we share a common ancestor with chimps. But you're looking at these quote unquote bones, this undeniable physical evidence, and saying, actually, no, it's not. And correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think that's much stronger evidence than, hey, these are Jesus's bones, I promise.
Yeah, and also we need to keep into context that if for the thought experiment, if Otangelo says if they found Jesus's bones, we're past the fact whether how we can know whether or not these are actually Jesus's bones.
We're accepting it as true, even if
we have to. That's a step we don't have to talk about, because if Jesus's bones are found, they're his bones. Otherwise, we found someone else's bones.
Right.
Yeah, I just think it's not a realistic scenario. I don't think we would ever get to the point where they would say, "Oh yeah, those are Jesus's bones."
No, I agree. I agree.
In reality, right?
Listen, we are.
If only we had Otangelo here to speak for himself.
Can I answer, please?
Yeah.
We are starting from the premise that the bones which would have been found are from Jesus. How that would have been investigated and come to the conclusion, that doesn't matter. We start from this issue. Let's suppose that the bones are proven 100% from Jesus. So what does that entail? And my position is, if that would be true, then the Christian faith would be destroyed.
And you wouldn't go to, well, maybe then he ascended and left his body behind.
Exactly.
You wouldn't. That wouldn't even be an
bone
option for
behind.
you, Otangelo?
Well, Peter, I mean, Christ, he did say to the disciples what would happen. It was foreseen by him. And I mean, the whole New Testament would be false, because the core issue here on the entire theology is his resurrection.
I agree, but the reason that I'm asking, and this is, and don't ask me about where I need to find the verse. I know it's there, so that's I'll find it if you need me to. But Christ did tell his disciples that he would return before
they all died.
Before all of them would have tasted death. I think that's how the wording was in yeah. So the fact all of them are dead.
No, there's one apostle walking around who's really, really old.
There's one who didn't die for some reason.
He's guarding
one that got away.
Well, Peter,
let me make my point. Let me make my point.
Interrupt you here. Did you
No.
listen
Let
to
me make my
Darth's
point first, Otangelo, and then you can, because this is a question that I really wanted to ask. So that is in the Bible. After Christ didn't return, people came up, and I've heard at least 4 different explanations on how that could still be possible. I've heard the fact that but they meant Jesus meant spiritual death. I've heard it that the apostles would come back in some form. I've heard it that there's one who's, according to the Bible, has never died. So I'm not entirely sure which one it was, and he brought it up just now. Sorry, they've read into the story. So if Jesus's bones are found, do you think no one will come up with an alternative explanation to still make the Bible valid?
Well, Peter, I suggest that you go back into Interaction at Speed's channel, where I didn't have an answer to your question, and Darth came in and he gave you actually an answer in regards of that.
I forgot, but the people who are listening here aren't privy to that conversation, and in order to find that, the people who are listening to Tom Rabbitt's channel, they would have to go through Speed's entire channel to see if they can find that.
I can resume it. That part ends at one chapter and then starts another one, where Christ leads, I think, 2 apostles, Peter and John, if I remember correctly, and he leads them to a mountain, and there Christ is transformed, and the Father appears to him, and they have a vision. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, I do. Yes.
Yes. So it was that is referred to that vision, and Darth explained it in a very succinct and clear manner.
Now I remember, that was when Darth came on, and where we one of the few times that I've seen Darth actually talk about the Bible.
Yeah.
But there are other Christians that will come up with different explanations. So I will accept that Darth came up with an explanation. Other Christians come up with other explanations, and this is why I'm saying that, let's say we would find the bones of Jesus. I don't think that, at least I wouldn't think that all Christians would think, okay, this is the end of Christianity, the Bible is false. And I don't know how much, and I really want to say this without being insulting. And so if you see it as an insult, that's not how it's meant to be. How big a part of your identity is made up by being a Christian? And I say this because I've had conversations with people who left Christianity and really struggled with the part that was probably the majority of their identity. So I still think that when push comes to shove, Otangelo, you would at least try and find to see if there was a possibility to have Jesus's bones and still think that the Bible is true. And and it's not even a fault that I would say, but if it's a big enough part of your identity, then you're going to hit an identity crisis, and you probably want to hang on to who you are instead of trying of having to completely reinvent who you are, if that makes any sense.
Well, I mean, I was very clear, and I said that this is the core of Christianity, Christ's resurrection, and who he claimed to be, namely the Son of God, and the second part of the triune God. And if this is falsified and not true, then the Christian faith is destroyed.
Okay, but finding his bones wouldn't necessarily falsify that, would it?
Yes, it would.
Really?
Well,
Yes.
I mean, Jesus was claimed to be human. I mean, finding bones of him would just say that he was human. It wouldn't tell you.
That would
Look,
confirm he
I
was
don't
fully
like to
human.
quote
I agree.
Kent Hovind, but it just is proof that they're just bones. They're bones in the ground. They're not proof of anything. Maybe
Yeah,
Jesus ascended and he left his femur there.
Well, and it says
again,
nothing about whether or not it doesn't do anything in saying like whether or not Jesus in refuting the divinity of Jesus.
No, that's the point that I'm getting at too.
Really quick, guys. We're approaching 3 hours. It's amazing. Time flies.
I know.
But I'm gonna end
We're having
it
so
at
much fun. FUN.
I want to end it at 3 hours.
Why would you end this?
Because I maybe want to do another thing.
Whatever.
But it's
All
a
right.
Lamb Chop sing-along episode, don't you know? It's a song that never ends.
Yeah.
Look, I don't want to. I want to keep things accessible to people. 3 hours is kind of like, hey, I got something I got to do. I'm gonna listen. I got a long thing to listen to. That's great, but I just don't want to keep on going forever. And
Yeah, but on the B theory of time, this is eternal. So
Well, let me be the first one to say this, Tom. I really appreciate it for you to let me come on and ramble on a bit. And I love streams like this. So I'm hoping that you're going to do more of that in future.
I can do that.
I'll tune in.
yeah, thanks for inviting Otangelo.
Yeah,
too.
it's nice to talk to
Otangelo-
Otangelo. He has interesting perspectives.
Like I had a discussion with Darth, which lasted not too long, as you can imagine. right before this, and then Otangelo said, "Well,
One wonders why."
Why don't you talk to me?" And I said, "Okay, let's talk." And so we did. That's how it happened. But
That's nice.
yep. For everyone listening and the viewers, that video I will post tomorrow morning. So you'll have Darth versus Tom round 5. It ends probably in a way you can guess, but it's longer than the last one. It's about 10
He
minutes.
abandons Christianity, doesn't
It's
he?
not bad.
Are you saying, Tom, you could make a prophecy on how these conversations will end in future?
Yeah,
I mean,
of course. Yeah.
To keep it biblical.
Yeah. And Otangelo, I mean, look, Otangelo is willing to come on and talk about these things, which is actually not all that common. It's actually not all that common, man. So
It's commendable.
And he actually talks, right? He doesn't
JJ,
just yell at you.
you've been sitting there. I made a spot for you. You've been sitting there for God knows how long. And do you have anything to actually say now that we're about to end soon?
Well, there's a few things. One thing, though, is that appealing to science to support the Kalam only gets you maybe. You should really think about that. Do you hear me, Otangelo?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
All right.
Because I think you're the main person I'm telling this to. There's nothing in science that you can appeal to that necessitates the conclusion of the Kalam. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, the entire point hinges to the claim that the universe had a beginning. Of course, that can be disputed.
Great. I read your little I read your link that you posted. I'm going to look at it some more. And we could talk about it later maybe, but there was another thing when you were talking about...
Tom, can you actually put these links after our stream on the description of the stream? That would be nice.
Which all of them? I don't want that's too many.
Just
I'll do the
one or
last
two.
one. Is that enough?
The universe at the beginning and the universe cannot be past eternal. If you can put these two, that would be nice.
All right. I will. Since you are a panelist and you came on, I will put those in. I'll do that. Here you go. Also looks like Canadian Catholic is having a debate. I have no other information other than that, but Canadian Catholic, you're free to put the link. DM it to me on Discord, and I'll put it in the chat for you. Yeah. So, I was thinking of is like sometimes we might maybe should have a Darth airing of grievances stream. And just have just like a revolving door. I'll get like the streamer where you can have like multiple people, or we'll just have a revolving door about people telling us their experience, how they got muted and kicked, and then
Didn't you just
go on
say-
and on. It just like be
Didn't
never
you just
ending.
say
It would just
you
be
were-
like
Didn't you just say you didn't want to go on beyond 3 hours if you're going to air that? What makes you think you've got enough time to do it?
That's a good point. That's a good point. It's like everyone comes on and tells their story about how they're used and abused.
Everybody gets only a minute. Come on in.
You should reach out to Jay Robin. Maybe he'd like to participate in something like this.
No, Tom, just make it a series. That will work.
There we go.
And I think a lot of people would really enjoy that too. I know for a fact I would.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm gonna end it there then, guys. I thanks everyone for coming on. Nice meeting you, also people that I haven't seen.
Yeah,
before.
thanks, Tom.
So, yeah, no problem.
Enjoy your
We'll
work.
do it again, and to all the viewers, thank you, and talk to you next time.